Are we good, Jeff?
Just one moment and I'll confirm. Yes, it looks like you're good.
Excellent. Thank you everyone for joining. Welcome to this October 26th council meeting. Mayor Vavenovic unfortunately had to attend to an unexpected family matter. And so I will be taking his position as acting mayor as conducting the council meeting. I'll start off with a comment first. Due to COVID-19 and recommendations by Waterloo Region Public Health to exercise physical distancing, City Hall is open for select services and by appointment only. Members of the public are invited to participate in this meeting electronically by accessing the meeting's live stream video at kitchener.ca/watch now. While in-person delegation requests are not feasible at this time, members of the public are invited to submit written comments by contacting Jeff Bunn, Deputy City Clerk at jeff.bunn@kitchener.ca. Written comments will be circulated to members of council and will form part of the public record. I'll begin with a land acknowledgement. Today we gather on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe Haudenosaunee people. We recognize our responsibility to serve as stewards of the land and honor the original caretakers who came before us. Our community is enriched by the enduring knowledge and deep-rooted traditions of the diverse First Nations, Métis, and Inuits in the Kitchener today. If we can, as you're able, please stand for singing of O Canada. And if you like, you can turn off your video feed. Thank you, everyone. I'm not sure if you were having some technical glitch, but the audio sound wasn't there. So we sang as we were able and probably in good tune, I hope. The minutes to be accepted as mailed to the mayor and councilors, regular meeting held October 5th, 2020, and special meetings held October 5th, 19th, and 20th, 2020 is moved by Councillor Marsh. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. Communications to be referred to file, and we are fortunate to recognize a number of community groups today. So we will go on to the presentation. Each year, Council and City of Kitchener staff who work with alongside our outstanding volunteers take time during a council meeting to celebrate the long service milestone anniversaries of some of our affiliated volunteer groups. Although meetings in person is not possible this year, we will still want to celebrate and recognize the fact that each group plays an immeasurable role in building a strong and connected Kitchener. Tonight, we will start with presentations to minor sport groups, over 40-year volunteer Lead Minor Sport Groups partners with the City of Kitchener to offer children and youth affordable ways to pursue their personal goals and play the sport that they love. More than ever, we see their dedication as they tirelessly work through COVID-19 by following all approved health and safety guidelines. Many of our minor sport groups have been able to return to play in a safe manner. I will now invite Councillor Schneider, as Vice Chair of the Community and Infrastructure Services Committee, to recognize those groups who are celebrating their 25th and 35th milestones. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Singh. KW Special Olympics celebrates 25 years in Kitchener-Waterloo. Their primary goal is to contribute to the physical, social, and psychological development of people with intellectual disabilities through positive, successful experiences in sport. They've grown to where they are now, providing athletes year-round training and competition in 18 different sports. Congratulations and thank you. Excelsior Fencing Club celebrates 35 years, starting as a place where a small group of competitive fencers wanted to train. The Excelsior Fencing Club has evolved over the last decade into a club that focuses on community and youth programming. Thank you and congratulations, Excelsior Fencing Club. Much has changed within the 35 years of KW Synchro. Most recently, Waterloo Synchro united with KW Synchro, and the newly formed club now runs under the name Waterloo Region Artistic Swim Club. The merger allows them to bring the best of each club together. They've been recognized as the top club in the province 9 times in the last 10 years. Congratulations, Waterloo Region Artistic Swim Club.
Thank you, Councillor Schneider. I will now invite Councillor Galloway Sealock, as Chair of Community and Infrastructure Services Committee, to recognize those groups who are celebrating their 40th milestone. Councillor Galloway Sealock.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Singh. KW Sidewingers Sledge Hockey Club does not see limitations, only opportunities. For 40 years, this club has brought adapted version of regular ice hockey to our community, allowing children, teens, and adults to experience the game of hockey. Thank you to this very hard-working group of volunteers with the Sledge Hockey Club. Next, we celebrate Southwest Kitchener Optimist T-Ball as they celebrate 40 years. Their club focuses on non-competitive baseball that teaches the basic principles of team play and, above all, fun. They offer programs for boys and girls ages 3 to 16 with an average enrollment of 250 players. We appreciate your 40 years of service to the Southwest Kitchener Optimist T-Ball Club.
Thank you, Councillor Galloway Sealock. Marking 50 years, the Forest Hill T-Ball Association has heard the cheers and countless parents and family members encouraging children to run the bases. Starting with 4 teams and 8-year-old boys, the association has grown so children as young as 4 can play ball. Thank you for your 50 years of service. Finally, we celebrate our last minor sport group of the night, KW Gymnastics Club, 55 years. This club continues to receive recognition in the province as one of the top 5 clubs in terms of registration. They work closely with many partners to offer programs at affordable rates, which provide opportunity for all gymnasts to reach their maximum potential through innovation and quality programs. Thank you for your dedication to our community. Now let's celebrate neighborhood associations. Kitchener residents enjoy a wealth of programs and resources close to home thanks to a working partnership we have with volunteers from 28 neighborhood associations that operate across the community. Neighborhood associations have always responded and adjusted to unique needs to their neighborhood, and this is truly the case today as they continue to adopt and find new and different ways to serve the community. I will now invite Councillor Ioannidis to recognize the association in Ward 7.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Councillor Singh. First, we celebrate Forest Heights Community Association's 45 years in our community. They have grown to where they now offer over 100 programs for all ages and interests, countless events, and fostered important partnerships and helped to raise funds to build 4 playground structures and to make interior upgrades to the Forest Heights Community Center. Congratulations.
Thank you, Councillor Ioannidis. I will now ask Councillor Chapman to recognize the association in Ward 9.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Singh. The Cherry Park Neighborhood Association celebrates 25 years of bringing their neighbors together. Their annual Cherry Festival sees hundreds, if not thousands of people joining in on the fun. And the recent construction of the picnic shelter on Cherry Commons has provided a gathering area for the neighborhood. Thank you all for your contributions to your neighborhood, my neighborhood as well. The Victoria Park Neighborhood Association, who are celebrating 45 years of connecting with and listening to their neighbors, have developed a neighborhood action plan that outlines several priorities for their neighborhood. The priorities include creating historical storyboards in and around Victoria Park, partnering with the city's Urban Tree Initiative, and expanding the VPNA food forest. Thank you all, and congratulations on achieving this milestone.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. I will now ask Councillor Marsh to recognize the association in Ward 10.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Singh. Marking 30 years, the Auditorium Neighborhood Association is fostering a sense of community spirit and pride, and it encourages participation. They are known now for their Welcome to the Neighborhood package, which endeavors to make new neighbors feel welcome and to let them know all about the amazing things in the neighborhood, such as their neighbor house tour and chili cook-off events. Since its inception just last year, 50 packages have been delivered. Congratulations. Next up is the Downtown Neighborhood Alliance, consisting of 8 neighborhood associations. This is a unique group that has been committed to coordinating programs at the Downtown Community Center, and it acts as a forum to explore issues and opportunities for neighborhoods in and around downtown Kitchener. This year, they celebrate 15 years of bringing people together in the heart of the city, and we sincerely appreciate their contributions. Finally, we also want to acknowledge the King East Neighborhood Association as they celebrate 5 years of encouraging connections within their neighborhood. They have had a busy 5 years, planning several gatherings and playing an active role in the development of the neighborhood itself by attending public consultations, advocating for safer intersections and traffic controls, and supporting active transportation. Congratulations. We look forward to seeing what you have planned in the next 5 years and beyond.
Thank you, Councillor Marsh. Together, 13 amazing groups who are all volunteer-led have contributed to 445 years of service to Kitchener. This commitment and dedicated service makes Kitchener truly a great place to live, work, and play. Congratulations to all our long service award recipients on behalf of council, staff, and citizens. Please accept my sincerest thanks to our tremendous contribution to our community. So thank you. Next, we have a presentation from Ms. Mary Jane Patterson for REAP Green Solution, presenting the REAP Green Solutions Annual Impact Report. Council has been emailed the REAP Annual Report already. Ms. Patterson, whenever you're ready.
All right. Thank you all. Thank you, Acting Mayor Singh, councillors, and staff. It's a pleasure to speak to you tonight and to share REAP Green Solutions Impact Report with you. We're looking back over the past year that ended just as COVID began, our fiscal year, and our accumulated impact over 21 years of REAP. And you'll see some of the stats on our slides. I'll give you a little context around each one. As you know, REAP is an environmental charity that helps us all live more sustainably. Next slide, please. Our newest way to do that is through tree stewardship, and we're very happy to work with Kitchener and Cambridge to support residents in planting new trees and learning how to care for the existing trees on their property. Here's our results so far with just our first year under our belt. The tree planting was held up this year by the COVID lockdown, and we've just caught up this fall getting the backlog into the ground. Next slide, please. Now onto water conservation. On behalf of the region of Waterloo, we provide free water audits for high water use homes. or for those interested in the region's new water softener plumbing rebate. Half of these water audits have been done for Kitchener residents. We also work with homeowners on saving water outside the home to show how to manage stormwater so that it doesn't become runoff that pollutes our local waterways. What's cool about this work is that it also helps people make a healthy, beautiful yard at the same time. We'll be scaling up this work significantly over the next 8 years to complement the work the city is doing on its stormwater infrastructure. REAP's community engagement on those issues will be an important part of making these projects successful. Next slide, please. Here is another project that works to restore groundwater, prevent flooding, and reduce runoff, Deep Pave Paradise. So far, we've worked with 2 schools, including Shepherd Public School in Kitchener and the Board of Trade in one township, to rip up pavement and put in beautiful green space. REAP's been able to bring the funding that supports our side of the work, organizing and coordinating the project. Next slide, please. So now here's the work you know us for the most. In the past 21 years, we've evaluated the energy efficiency of 17,000 homes in the region, and half of those have been in Kitchener also. And their actions have reduced 27,000 tons of greenhouse gas emissions. Looking to the future, we're working with our municipalities now to bring low interest financing for homes to encourage more and deeper energy retrofits. A new initiative for us in the past couple of years has been Project Neutral, the online platform I introduced you to last year. It helps us calculate our own emissions, each of us, and what we can do about them. And you can see that over 1,500 people have logged on to learn more about their carbon footprint. We've had some nice results with lunch and learns at businesses, even during COVID lockdown time. Next slide, please. Our energy work in particular is in direct support of our local climate action plan and our long-term target to reduce the emissions in Waterloo Region by 80% by 2050. That's a big challenge, and in our partnership with Sustainable Waterloo Region and all the municipalities, we brought 2 years of funding to help us create the long-term action plan. It's also allowed us to bring capacity building workshops for municipal staff on topics like energy storage, carbon budgeting, and embodied carbon. We plan to have a plan that we'll be bringing to council this winter. And next slide, a big part of what we do is community outreach, including the very exciting Zero Waste Challenge. Today is the last official day of the 7-day Zero Waste Challenge. It is such a neat way to join others to see how we can reduce the waste we send to landfill. I've been doing the 30-day challenge, and you can see that my jar is in a little bit of trouble, but that's okay, because that's the point of it, to learn from what's going in the jar and what I can do differently when I shop to reduce it. So I want to say a big thanks to everybody that participated this year. I'll just say a quick thing about each of the next 3 slides. The first one is about donations, just to say how important they are to our work. Thank you. Especially for unfunded initiatives like the Zero Waste Challenge. We are so appreciative of our donors. Next slide. We are pleased to say we returned to a positive balance this past year. We've been investing in program development, and it has come to fruition. Next slide. You really get a sense of the diversity of programs and partners that have helped us have some diversity and resilience in our financing. And finally, last slide, I want to end with our most important message, a very big thank you to the City of Kitchener for being a core funder of this work, and now on a multi-year basis that helps to make all of this possible. You are helping us all live sustainably through your support, and we say a very big thank you. That's it. How did I do? Am I under 5 minutes?
Thank you, Ms. Patterson. And yes, you are in reasonable time. So thank you. Just seeing if any members of council have questions for you. Councillor Marsh, go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you. So thank you for the presentation. Wonderful news that things are going so well, even though COVID must have slowed down some of the programming. But I want to say, I've always been quite reluctant to want to do the Zero Waste Challenge because I know that it would be a big challenge, but I'm going to try it. I'm going to try it next time.
Great.
So you can hold me to it. But I'm just wondering, do you have specific times during the year when you do the 7-day and the 30-day challenges, or?
Yeah, October is, I think actually the week that just finished is officially Waste Reduction Week in Canada. So that's why we choose October. And we start the 30-day at the beginning of October, and we start the 7-day on, I think it was the 18th or 19th of last Monday of
Okay.
October.
All
So
right,
everybody finishes around the same time.
all right. So members of the public have a whole year now to gear themselves up for the
To get
next.
ready, but you don't have to wait for that. You
No, of course.
can plop a jar in the kitchen right now and see what happens.
That's a good idea. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you, Councillor Marsh. Next, we have Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, hi, thank you, Mary Jane, for coming in. I don't really have a question. I just want to thank you for the work that you do at REAP. And regarding the 5-day challenge, I didn't do it this year because I'm trying to follow the region's waste management guidelines that we aren't supposed to put Kleenexes in the jar. And I think my jar would be full in a day with just Kleenex. So I thought, well, I can't do this. I'll have to wait for another year when I can put it in the green bin. Anyway, thank you. Thank you for the work that you're doing.
Well, I could recommend cloth handkerchiefs.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
You asked, Councillor Chapman. So there you have it.
Now
Yeah,
I have to do words, eh? Okay, thank you.
Councillor Johnson. Councillor Johnson, you're up.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Mary Jane, for coming in tonight. It's always great to see you and to hear your report. And I am one of those 17,000 homes that did a audit with you a couple of years ago. I learned so much, and I was able to retrofit with a number of different suggestions. And I've really seen a change in my energy bills and in just how warm my basement are that weren't previously. So it really, it really is a great service to the community that you're doing, all of the education work that you're doing and the different services that you provide. This year I participated as well, and I bought a number of plants from you to basically a bee-friendly garden. Was not quite so successful with that, to be honest with you. That was my fault. They shouldn't let me have plants, truly. But anyhow, it's some really great initiatives and that you're doing, and I thank you for all the education work in the community. And again, you're always you're so willing to come and share your thoughts and ideas with us. So thanks.
Anytime. Mm-hmm. Anytime. I'm so glad to hear about what you've been participating in. And I'm as soon as I find a pen, I'm going to make a note that you're a good candidate for a testimonial.
Sure, but no one should come and take a look at my garden. I'm just
Okay,
saying.
not for the plants.
Pictures. Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Galloway-Sealock.
Yeah, thanks, Mary Jane, for coming in. I just had a quick question. You skimmed over the financials there for a second, and I just wanted to go back to that really quickly. And you said that you were in a net positive position. What can you explain a little further of what attributed to you being net positive?
Mm-hmm. Well, we've been investing in program development, and that's a big part of it. Sometimes it's just the combination of projects that come that year. Often many projects are for 1 or 2 years. So an interesting one this year that helped is that I've been part of a consulting team on behalf of REAP, consulting the City of Toronto on its existing building strategy to get to net zero building emissions by 2050. And that's been a way to not only bring some revenue into REAP, but really to learn things I can bring to Waterloo Region too. Just an interesting project that helped us float our boat this year. In other ways, it's just things we've been building towards. Things like the tree stewardship program. We've been investing time in having those relationships with the municipalities, looking at other models, what we can bring here. So that helps make a difference too.
Good. I just wanted to go over some of those because I think there's a lot of positive work that you've been doing in our community and want to make sure we highlight all that. So thank you very much for the work you do.
Thank you.
Okay, so those are all the questions. I'll quickly take an opportunity to ask one myself. Mary, I think Councillor Johnston referenced the audits, the energy audits, and I think that was a phenomenally well-run program that benefited a big part of our community, and there was a lot of uptake as well. And I believe REAP was in the leading forefront in administering that program when the federal funding was available to offset some of the costs to energy retrofit. Now that we're going through a pandemic and what we're hearing from the federal government that much of the, to drive the economy will be green focused, is there an opportunity right now to advocate to the federal government to once more relook at a program that was very successful in not only, improving our environment, but also it helps our local economy because it hires a lot of people to do the work, the energy retrofits that would be required. So I'd love to hear your comments on that and see if there's, is REAP advocating? Is there opportunity for the city in conjunction with REAP to advocate together? Because I think it's an important cause.
Well, that's a great idea to do it together with the city. REAP has advocated for that. What we've heard from the government has been about free energy audits and $40,000 in interest-free loans for energy retrofits. And then the low interest program I mentioned is the FCM providing support for municipalities looking at ways to provide loans for energy retrofits. And those two seem a little bit at odds since the federal government's thinking about providing a loan itself. So they'll have to work that out. So we're pursuing all of that. But everywhere we go, we definitely talk about incentives, including to the federal government. That really makes a big difference. And right now, the only incentives are through Enbridge for its customers. So that leaves out the city of Kitchener. And everywhere we go, we let the government, to other two levels of government, know that incentives, any incentives should be for all residents, all homes, regardless of fuel type and regardless of provider of fuel type. So we definitely do that advocacy, and it would be neat to think about how to do it together with the city.
Okay, it's great that you pointed out that there are some grants, not grants, but options that homeowners can uptake, like loans. But going through a pandemic, many of us have taken on debt that we didn't foresee.
Yeah.
And be it even interest-free, the idea of more debt, even for a great cause such as this, kind of is worrisome. So the previous program that was grant as opposed to a loan, I think that's one of the reasons why the uptake was so high. So thank you. I wanted just to get your comment on it. And I do agree with you that I think this is a good opportunity for the city to work with REAP and advocate, and would love to do something like that with you.
Okay.
Thank you very much for presenting.
All right. Thank you all.
All right. Next up, we have Dr. Stephanie Sobek-Savant of Rare Charitable Research Reserve, presenting rare lands securement strategy as well as habitat preservation and conservation efforts throughout the region of Waterloo and Wellington County. Stephanie, whenever you're ready, we're ready for you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me tonight. I am going to share my screen if that's okay with you.
Please.
Oh, it says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Jeff, if you can assist.
You can try now.
Okay. This looks good. Just gonna put it in presentation mode. Wonderful. Can you all see this?
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having us here tonight. I'm here to talk to you a little bit more about land protection for conservation across Waterloo region. And I believe this is my first time tonight presenting actually to the Kitchener City Council, which is particularly exciting to me because I do live in Kitchener personally. So thank you for having us. As many of you may know, as a Land Trust and Environmental Institute, conservation has always been RARE's priority. And we currently own actually over 989 acres of conservation land in Waterloo Region and Wellington County. And we will indeed be celebrating our 20-year anniversary next year as our education and research programs continue to grow. And currently, we are in the process of finalizing our next 5-year strategy and plans. And one key focus will be to launch and implement the Rare Sites Land Securement Strategy, which I will be presenting here today. So I'm sure, as you're all well aware of, Waterloo Region is home to more than 550,000 people already and expected to grow by another 35% over the next 2 decades. So with this increase in population, land is increasingly becoming more highly sought after, and it is really important that we grow the percentage of conservation land alongside the development to protect ecosystem services and other benefits that our health and well-being really depends upon. So in fall 2014, Chris Gosselin, who was the planner at the region at the time, actually hosted a meeting to discuss the opportunity for a community organized, not-for-profit regional multi-property land trust. And the reason for that was because he wanted to fill sort of what was the hole in the donut at the time where the arrow points here. This is a map provided by the Ontario Land Trust Alliance that shows the catchment areas of all the land trusts that are operating in Ontario. And while RARE was present already at the time, we had all our lands clustered in the Blair area, but there was always plans when the organization was funded originally to ultimately and eventually expand that to other land holdings in the region. So Chris was really kind of the one who stirred the pot to get these conversations going again. And after many follow-up meetings with representatives from various environmental groups and other interested parties, these people all came together at RARE to form the Rare Sites Land Securement Team as part of RARE's organizational framework. And the particular mandate was born to develop and implement a land securement strategy for the area that you see highlighted here, Waterloo Region, Wellington. So as you may know, there are a number of other organizations in the area who also have an environmental focus that relates to the protection of land. However, many of them are not currently acquiring new lands for conservation, or their focus is simply slightly different. For example, the Ontario Farmland Trust is focused on farming easements versus conservation lands. So many of the organizations listed here have since become partners in our efforts and are members of the Rare Sites Land Securement Team, because what counts for us as a community goal is land actually being protected and not so much who is ultimately the responsible party who ends up protecting it or owning those lands. So to give you a little bit of the background of why we're doing it and how we have done it, the purpose of the land securement strategy is to identify parcels of interest for conservation. In our case, this meant applying a real watershed perspective, because natural lands and ecosystem services don't end at municipal boundaries. So this means that actually protecting the tributaries and headwaters of the Grand will also have a really positive impact on ecosystems further downstream, including our cities here. So the main criteria that were applied included the ecological significance and connectivity and size of potential parcels of interest. So basically, we determined desirable characteristics of conservation land, such as, for example, wetland, present or woodland and floodplain, and also the proximity to already secured lands. And this was also taken into consideration with threats of urbanization, the potential for funding for potential acquisitions, and also the geographic dispersion to serve every lower tier municipality within the region of Waterloo and Wellington County. The result was this map, which identified 17 target areas to a total of about 365 properties that were identified being of interest in some way or another for conservation in Waterloo Region. So the way we did that is we entered all the data in a geographic information system, and you can layer it on the computer, and it shows you nicely kind of where these hotspots are, and the ones that are in the 90th to 95th percentile, so that score really high in terms of coverage, those were the ones that were selected. And in total, I think our experts, including Tom Woodcock, who is here tonight, looked at about 15,000 parcels that were analyzed in this way, and this was the result that we came up with. And what you see in the green circle here is roughly pointing to the 2 target areas that were identified within the boundaries of the city of Kitchener, which we have termed kind of the Kitchener-Waterloo target area, and also the Roseville Swamp. And within these two areas, we actually identified a total of just under 50 properties of potential interest, just under 2,000 acres to be specific. But we're now currently in the process of sort of ground truthing the data and checking against what's actually there on the ground, because what sometimes happens when you do these analyses on the computer, something shows up as green and nice and of potential interest, but turns out to be a golf course in real life, or some of these properties are actually already protected either by the GRCA, for example, or of course we all know the city of Kitchener itself has done a really great job with their natural areas as well. So we really kind of want to see where can we fit in as a partner and where can we work together to hopefully have more conservation lands in this lovely city. So the overall goal for this work is to hopefully protect another 400 hectares of additional land in the next 5 years. We're well working away towards this target already because there's a number of landowners who have reached out to us already. And so there's a number of properties shortlisted that are under consideration or or in some stage of the securement process already. And to give you a little bit of an idea of what this could look like, this is actually the Roseville Swamp target area. And we are about to complete our first acquisition there, which is the Reiner property. It's a property that will come to RARE as an eco-gift donation by the Reiner family. And it's a really good example of of what the larger idea is behind here, because what you see in the blue lines is the entirety of the Roseville Swamp target area. And the parcels that you see highlighted in light blue and sort of light peach are parcels that are already protected for conservation, in this case, either held by the GRCA or by Waterloo Region Nature. And the parcel within the pink lines is actually the parcel that's coming to RARE. So the sort of end goal is that over time, and I'm really speaking like probably a very long time in terms of decades, to add more parcels to that so that we have a connected, protected area that can serve as a wildlife refuge and corridor. And hopefully some areas will also become available for public recreation as well. Just to kind of briefly wrap this up here, typically landowners are only familiar with two options of what they can do with their land, either sell it or leave it to their children. However, there are numerous other methods. And as I mentioned earlier, the Reiner family, for example, has decided to give their land to RARE as a donation. And another option could also be to put a conservation agreement or an easement on the title, which spells specifically out what lands are protected, but the landowner continues to own the land, whereas it is restricted of what can be done or, for example, taken out of the protected areas. One specific thing that RARE is able to do is to accept land donations within the Ecological Gifts or short Eco-Gifts program, which comes with a number of benefits for the landowner, including ensuring that in the unlikely case, should an organization ever fold that is an eco-gift recipient, lands that have been received that way would have to go to another conservation organization or another eco-gifts recipient. So it really absolutely ensures that those lands will be protected for the benefit of the community in perpetuity. This is all what I would like to introduce you to today. I know you have been provided sort of the summary report of these efforts. It's a really interesting read if you want to learn more about the possibilities and opportunities that exist. And I would like to thank you for the great partnership. We have an individual who works with the city of Kitchener on our Rare Sites Land Securement team as well. And I think for us to really make this work for the benefit of the community and to protect these important ecosystems, it's really critically important that we continue to have great partnerships that we can make this happen. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Sobek-Savant. I'll see if any members of council have questions. And there are none. Thank you so much for presenting and bringing this to us.
Thank you.
All right. So now we'll head on to the delegations. First, we have Shirley Goslin of Cherry Park Neighborhood Association, and it's regarding the sale of Brom Yard to developers. Before we go to the delegation, I think it's important to note there isn't anything before council as to an item for the sale of Bromlands, and if staff like to elaborate, it's a potential as part of the economic development strategy, but there is no direction before council currently that directs us regarding sale of those lands. Okay.
Hello.
Whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor and honorable councilors and city staff. I thank you for this opportunity to speak to you regarding my concerns and those of my neighborhood about Make It Kitchener 2.0, a strategy to guide economic recovery and growth. We commend the city for looking beyond the pandemic and planning for the continued viability and health of our community and its people and economy. We can see that there has been a lot of discussion with business and other stakeholders. Unfortunately, I feel there are some serious flaws in this plan. Firstly, it appears to be heavily dependent on selling off city assets to finance the plan. Assets that once are sold cannot be replaced except at great cost. Secondly, the report states that the #1 issue raised by the community is affordable housing. Yet in the plan, it is relegated to fourth or fifth place in the list of priority, and only 11% of the funds are allocated to it. Thirdly, the main reason I am delegating tonight is to ask how specific properties are being identified for sale. They are only vaguely referred to in the report as vacant or underutilized land. It would appear that the land is being valued on its economic benefits only. The report doesn't mention any specific land, but all the media reports on this plan mention the Bram Yards specifically. The Bram Yards are entirely located in the Cherry Park neighborhood, and this large parcel of land is considered very important to the future of our neighborhood well-being. I strongly approve of the city having firm boundaries so that the neighboring farmland and the Waterloo Moraine are both protected. The intensification of the city core with the increased residential units and employment opportunities are good for the city and our neighborhood. It will also sustain our improved public transportation. But intensification also brings more need for city resources and amenities for the new people coming to live downtown. Since almost all of the new housing units are luxury units, it unfortunately has the side effect of putting the cost of living up for all people living in the downtown core. The new units cater to those who have good paying jobs. But if you are living on a minimum wage job, a basic pension, disability allowance, or are a gig econ worker, it is getting very difficult to live in the downtown. Cherry Park is already a thriving mixed income neighborhood, but the influx of all the new and proposed luxury apartments, often replacing older, more affordable housing stock, will skew this balance to the wealthy and squeeze out the medium and lower income people. Remember, these are the same people who are currently being hailed as heroes in this pandemic. We need more publicly owned or not-for-profit housing in our neighborhood to try and restore our balance. The waiting list for such units has gone from 2 years to well over 5 years. I have heard from many people in my neighborhood that trying to find a place to accommodate a family is getting even harder, as most new housing units are 1 or 2 bedrooms only. Cherry Park has long visualized the Bram Yard property as a potential solution to address these concerns. 2 other concerns that intensification brings to our neighborhood are the need for recreational and community meeting space and the need for more green space. We do not have a community center in our neighborhood. We make do with borrowing or renting space from local institutions for the bulk of our programs. We get a small amount of time from the city's community centers to run a couple of our programs, but it means our people have to drive to them rather than walk. Intensification means my neighborhood will more than double in population before 2030. I see no mention in the plan to address these neighborhood concerns. The active rail line bordering the Bram Yards will constrain future land use. This makes it ideal for increased green space. Having parkland along the rail line creates a suitable safety buffer for other uses in that neighborhood. It will also directly connect with the trail going over King Street to the new transit hub. And it would be well used by the hundreds of new housing units being built beside it.
Shirley, if you can just try to wrap up.
Yeah, we have long visualized the Bram Yards being used to address all three of our concerns as a neighborhood association: affordable housing, community amenities, and green spaces. I urge you to consult more fully with the local community before any specific city land is disposed of. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Shirley, and you were in time. Councilor Chapman.
Yeah, hi Shirley. Thank you so much for coming in tonight and for your detailed, eloquent presentation. It was very good. I guess what I would, as you know, we're at a very early stage in this whole process, and I think that's why it's really important that you're here today to talk to us about this. Have you considered working with the Victoria Park Neighborhood Association at all about, the use of the Bram Yards?
We are currently in discussions with
them. They
them.
can call their own either. Yeah, have you had discussions with them, or are you working with them in any way?
Yes, we are currently in discussions. We actually have a meeting on Thursday to discuss more.
Okay. Because I think it will be very good for us to learn more as your discussions go on, and to work with you to see how we can maybe accommodate some of the requests that you're bringing forward, because I think your vision is very very helpful. So that's all, unless you want to add anything else.
Oh, thank you.
No, thanks.
Councilor Johnston.
Yes, thank you, Acting Mayor. And thank you so much, Shirley, for coming in tonight. You've made some excellent points about things that we do need to think about as we continue to look at how we're going to recover from the pandemic. And I appreciated your comments around things like more affordable housing and partnering and that with different groups. So thank you. So my question would be, what would you consider, I guess, from the neighborhood association perspective, about what we can do whenever we're looking at different properties? And I know that it's probably not the only properties that we'll be taking a look at. How would you, as a neighborhood association, how would you like us to look at consulting with you about that?
Well, I would like the neighborhood associations that are directly affected and connected to that land to have be considered stakeholders. So far in this plan, our neighborhood was not consulted about any of it.
Okay, yeah, and that's great. I know that when we discussed this last Tuesday night, I had asked a question that I'd had from a resident with regards to would the public be consulted about different pieces of property, and they definitely said that they would be as they come up. But that's what I really wanted to hear from the neighborhood association perspective as well. So thanks again, Shirley.
Thank you.
Shirley, once more, as Councillor Chapman put it, we thank you for your advocacy, and and being proactive and bringing it forward early on. So thank you very much for presenting. There are no more questions for you. Next is Jack Gibson, and he's with the Ontario. You know what, before we go to the next delegation, if we can just bring up the item, because Shirley did come forward for the Economic Development Strategy 2.0, Make It Kitchener 2.0. That's in unfinished business. So if I could have someone move that item.
Sorry, through you, Acting Mayor. Mr. Myron Steinman is also here for the Brom Street Yards item.
Okay, all right. That wasn't in my note, so please go ahead.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Try to get the picture a little better. Acting Mayor Paul Singh, City of Kitchener Councilors, City staff. My name is Mr. Myron Daniel Steinman. I am a tax-paying, sorry, I'll try to get the picture a little better. I am a tax-paying resident with the City of Kitchener. I live in Ward 9 in the Cherry Park neighborhood. I'm on the board of the CPNA. Thank you for enabling me to speak with you tonight as well via Zoom. I would like to speak to the issue of selling off city lands to raise over $100 million. I am not against the city raising over $100 million fund. However, I disagree that the selling off of city lands en masse is not the best way to raise these funds. Lands should only be sold as a last resort, may I suggest. If land is sold, it ought to be done on a parcel by parcel basis and not en masse, as I think is being proposed. Again, as Shirley has said, I would like to amplify, we need more affordable housing. There are many ways to accomplish truly affordable housing. Having land available to build housing is one of the better ways to do this. Thank you. I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Steinman. Just as a response to your point, the report does not recommend sale of lands en masse. As you may be concerned, it does speak to parcel by parcel and with appropriate consultation with the community. I do have a question for you from Councillor Chapman. Go ahead when you're ready.
Yeah, Myron, thank you so much for coming in this evening. So are you suggesting that you would support the sale of land if it were for affordable housing, or like Shirley had some additional ideas? Is for you the primary focus of the sale of any city properties affordable housing?
No, that's not my only emphasis, but I believe that is what I am primarily, that is a primary focus I have. And I have written on this topic, but I haven't submitted any material. But that is not my only concern. But affordable housing is needed in this area, truly affordable housing. Cherry Park neighborhood also, Ward 9 does not have a community center within our boundaries. People have to walk a long ways to the downtown community center or to outer boundaries at the community center on Westmount and Westmount.
Chopin?
Pardon me? Dear. We have a small storage area on the community center on Westmount and
Chopin.
Yeah.
Chopin, yes, right across from the school there. We do not have a community center within our lands, and our population is expected to grow. We have a mixed use zoning. We need a community center, I believe, too. We have small parkettes that need to be protected. We need more parkettes, I believe. But my main focus is the concern about affordable housing. Yes, that is true. And I do not believe there has been adequate consultation on this property of land. I am not sure what soil is damaged by the city yards, but I believe there may be some heavy truck oil that has spilled. There might be some heavy salt that was stored, but I don't believe there is tar sands on this city land. And I think it is very valuable land, and I think it should be sold only as a last resort. And I don't think there has been adequate consultation done on it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Myron. Thanks for coming in. I appreciate it. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilor Chapman. Mr. Steinman, there is one more question. Councilor Marsh?
Thank you. I just want to ask if staff might be willing to comment on these concerns that are being brought forward, just to clarify on what the plan is.
Mr. Bloom?
Because as far as I understand it, we're not anywhere close to disposition of land at this.
Through the acting mayor, you're correct. We are really at the early stages, and prior to disposition of any major land holdings like the Brom Yards, there would be a full and comprehensive community engagement process leading to ultimately a vision and a master plan that council would then be able to determine if and when it may wish to sell certain parcels. So all of what the two delegates have suggested will certainly come as some of the next steps in the process.
Thank you very much. That's comforting to hear, because I do appreciate the concerns of these members of the Cherry Park neighborhood, but also, it's echoed by many of the residents that I represent as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Marsh. And thank you, Myron, for presenting. There are no other questions for you. So if I could have a mover for the item. So initially, in principle, it was moved by Councilor Ioannidis, but Councilor Johnston, you raised your hand, so moved by you, seconded by Councilor Schneider. Any questions? Councilor Gazzola, you have a question?
I don't have any questions. I have a comment to make, though.
I see no one else, so please go ahead.
Yes, I would first like to apologize for the disruption I caused the other night because of my technical problems. So I wasn't able to make any comments when this was discussed by the rest of council. I was surprised to see something that was just being brought before council and being ratified on the same night without giving time, or giving at least a week in between. And it's interesting to see how the public are very interested in this, and I don't think they've really had an opportunity to engage on where we're going. It was just very recently that this whole plan was unveiled as to what it was going to do and where the funding was going to come from. So just to carry on, I've never been totally supportive of economic development initiatives because I've always felt that this level of government, our level, the municipal level, do not have the resources to deal with these issues. We do not have an income tax or a sales tax. Thus, our resources are limited primarily to property taxes. Therefore, I've always been biased, and you can probably see that from my record, towards our residential customers as opposed to our commercial customers. Commercial businesses have a lot of opportunities in claiming expenses and whatsoever for income tax and sales taxes that are not afforded to the typical residential homeowner. I really question the source of this funding for this new $110 million fund. First, we're going to take a $10 million reserve. I gather there is still $10 million there, or I understand even part of that has already been spent. This is a reserve that I think we need for rainy days, and for putting into a new fund, I don't think is necessarily a rainy day. But again, I'm question providing $5 million in pandemic relief for our businesses. I appreciate they need help. They need a lot of help. But this again is not comes under the federal and provincial mandate. It was interesting to note that just recently the federal government came out with an announcement of $12 million to help businesses. And here we are throwing up $5 million, almost as much as the federal government provided for the whole country. Another part of this funding is going to come from the fact that some of the debt from the old EDIF fund is now maturing and giving us a little bit of room. The minute we have some relief in debt and we go right back into debt, we're not doing the taxpayers any favor. Perhaps this debt that's coming due and thereby reducing our debt charges should be spun back to our ratepayers. Finally, and we've heard a lot of it already tonight, is this whole question of selling off land assets to provide money for this fund. Land is limited. You can't replace it. When you have it, you should hold on to it. I mean, there should be no consideration in my mind of selling land. Consider instead, if we want to do things, perhaps we can lease out parcels of land. That way it still stays under our control. I know when this issue came up to council a few years ago, there was a lot of pushback from the community. I know at that time they were looking at green areas, green fields to start selling. Right now, we don't have a list. We just say we're going to sell land. I know the public were really opposed to it a few years ago. Looking at the report that staff have made, page 17 of the report is devoted to, it's very good. It says what this strategy means for residents. What this strategy means for residents. Now, if you go into it, it has a lot of generalizations. And to me, it doesn't really talk about what it means for residents. I didn't support the original plan. And I've gone back to try to look at it from a taxpayer's viewpoint. What has happened between 2003 to 2020? I know there have been a lot of gains for the development industry. But what has it done for the average residential homeowner? Between 2003 and 2020 this year, the inflation rate.
Wrapping up, please.
Yes, I have two more points. Between 2003 and 2020, the inflation rate has gone up 33%. Yet our property taxes have gone up 45%. Homeowners lose on that. Water rates, which is one of our biggest products that we sell to our ratepayers, water has increased by 301%. Sewer surcharges increased by 506%. So that's what our residents have gotten out of this. And for those reasons and others, I won't be supporting what's before us tonight, and I would ask for a recorded vote.
Point of clarification, Acting Mayor Singh, if I could.
Yeah.
I just ask if Councillor Gazzola could please repeat his figures on the property tax increases. I didn't quite get them.
I said property taxes have increased by 45%, and the inflation rate has increased by 33%.
Over what time period?
Between 2003 and this year.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Gazzola, and we will do a recorded vote when we're ready. Councillor Davey?
Apologies, Councillor Gallery Silak was ahead of me.
I'm sorry. When the hands go up, it doesn't give a priority. So, Councillor Galloway Seelock, my apologies. Go ahead.
No worries. I queued in and queued out, so it's not really a big deal. I just want to reiterate with staff one of the questions that I asked during the committee meeting or the special council meeting with respect to the land. Because I don't want it to be open, all city lands are open for sale. That's not what this plan contemplates. I want to make sure we understand the limitations around what potential lands may be up for sale moving down the line with this plan.
Corey, can you elaborate?
Through the chair, as I noted last week, the focus here is not traditional parkland, whether that's playgrounds, arenas, golf courses, etc. Would predominantly focus on vacant land such as parking lots or lands within employment areas that the city has access to, not our very cherished community assets of parks and green space.
And to be abundantly clear, anytime one of these pieces of lands were opened up for potential sale moving forward with this plan, it would be up to council to make those individual decisions on individual properties, and that there would be extensive community consultation before we made those decisions.
Through the chair, that is correct. It would be a very thoughtful, methodical process with council providing a variety of approvals throughout the entire process, and community engagement, of course, included in that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Acting Mayor, can I make my comments or should I wait to see if there's other questions?
There's a few others, so I'll just come back.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Councillor Davey, go ahead.
I'm just comment as well.
Okay, Councillor Johnston. Your mic is off.
And I promised I would not be that person. Sorry. I have comments as well. I apologize. Thanks.
No, that's okay. And Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, so I have some concerns as well when it comes to the lands that we're referring to, because I know we've been requesting a list of city properties that could be used for affordable housing for months now, and yet we've yet to receive anything. And here we're in Kitchener 2.0, we're talking about affordable housing being one of the mandates behind this project. And so maybe we could get clarification on this, but my other question is, when we talk about sale of lands or purchasing of lands, is this stuff done publicly? Is it not often done, in caucus? And now we're going to do it publicly? Is that how? Is this a new thing, or maybe you can clarify?
Through the
I think
chair.
it should be done publicly. Let me just say that, but I understand that often it's not.
Through the chair. So on your last question, as I've said, prior to bringing any major city-owned piece of land, there would be community engagement, and likely, especially for significant parcels, a master plan and a vision, much like we've done in the past for other properties. That work is certainly all public. The competition, usually this would result in a request for proposals, which means a competition so that anyone may bid, and then council can ultimately select the proponent that they feel best matches what they're looking for. So yeah, all of that body of work is traditionally done publicly. And you'll have to remind me of your first question. Sorry,
well, it was just the tying in of the affordable housing component.
Right. So through the chair, as I mentioned last week, we anticipate one of the next steps in this journey, likely in the new year, is to bring the list of potential parcels that council could utilize for this purpose, and start to identify some priorities and how certain pieces of land may match some of the priorities. So what I would say is really the strategy in front of you is is meant to be sort of a guiding document and an endorsement by council that the use of city-owned land is one of the viable assets that you want to see us pursue. And then we would bring the details of those over time, as I said, very strategically, methodically, with significant amount of community input along the way.
So is the city getting into the affordable housing industry then? Is that what you're saying? Is that what this report is telling us?
Through the chair, so what our community told us was that affordable housing and affordability is issue number one, and that they want to see the city playing an active role in the solution. So I think there's a variety of ways in which the city can, utilizing its land as one option, could play a role in bringing about new affordable housing.
So can you just clarify, utilizing its land? I don't want to take up too much time, but utilizing city land for affordable housing. So just please clarify what you mean by that.
So through the chair, one of the issues we know is a challenge for those who trying to build affordable housing is the cost of land. So there's probably 3 or 4 ways in which the city could support affordable housing. One could be, donation of land. 2 could be sale of land and using the proceeds from that sale of land to support affordable housing. It could be sale of land, and instead of taking either full or partial value of the land sales, utilizing those land sales to acquire units within a project and holding those in public ownership for affordable housing. So, and that's probably only 3 of the options, but I think the simple point is land is an asset that council has an opportunity to think strategically about to advance the development of affordable housing.
And of course, the final question that remains is, what do we mean by affordable? I mean, I think it's very adventurous, and I think it's great if the city's actually going to help get those 4,000, 6,000 families off the affordable housing waiting list. But is there any reassurance that that is actually what's being meant here by affordable?
So through the chair, so again, I think that's deeper discussion for council at a later date, but probably what we would bring as part of a process, if we were looking at a given parcel of land, for example, is what are the options for council to ensure affordable housing, and is that affordable housing, it is attainable home ownership, where on the spectrum does council want to put its focus? And then what are the mechanisms that council, as I've heard from many councilors, assuring that it remains affordable or within that the city can control to ensure it remains affordable is a priority. So we would certainly bring those options forward so that council can make decisions accordingly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I don't see any more questions. I'll go to comments now. And Councillor Galway-Sealock, you wanted to comment.
Yeah, just quickly, I'm going to reiterate a couple of my comments from the special council meeting. But I understand that this is a high-level document, and there's plenty of community engagement still to come when each piece of land and parcel of land comes forward through this plan. I mentioned concern about the stating that this is a $110 million fund when it doesn't need to be. The sale of the lands is really what's going to dictate the amount of funding that's coming from this fund. I don't think we need to mimic what EDIF was. I think we need to look at this this opportunity and really continue to move forward with it. But with each sale of land, it will end up determining what that fund ultimately becomes. I'm comforted that each parcel of land will come back to council, and that, again, this is a high-level document. And I also mentioned during the special council meeting that it does cost the taxpayers no new money, but you lose an asset, which is valuable and has value to it, and that we could use the debt room to give back to the community. But overall, I see this as a high-level document that we can continue to proceed forward with and be able to have plenty of dialogue as we move forward with the plan.
Thank you, Councillor Galway-Sealock. Next, we have Councillor Davey.
Thank you. I'll try not to overlap my comments from when we discussed this earlier. I just wanted to again voice though my full support for this plan. I do think we're going in the right direction. I think plans like this are really a matter of one's political ideology. Mine happens to be reasonable taxation, which I have at the rate of inflation, and anything we can do within that to make this city as great as it possibly can be is my personal mandate. So that's something that everyone, individual councillor, has to grapple with. On some of the notes that were raised earlier in terms of taxation levels, all I can say is since I've been on this council back in 2010, every single property tax increase has been under the rate of inflation. Every single one since 2011. On top of that, we've cut Kitchener's debt in half since its peak in 2012, 2013. And we've also posted 5 surpluses in a row in the last 5 years. We're going in the right direction. Now we're challenged with bringing in a brand new economic development strategy that in the past wasn't based entirely on the tax base. This one is not. That does not mean that it's free. It comes with a cost, and the cost is our land assets. The interesting thing that we have to remember as the landowners in a city that collects property taxes is a parking lot collects no property taxes that we own. The Brom Yards collect no property taxes at all. It's sitting there being underutilized. Is this entire strategy affordable housing? No. But if we can get rid of some of these assets and put some stipulations in there to increase the supply of affordable housing while achieving all of our other economic development goals, it's a brilliant strategy. We are going to have to grapple with the idea of disposing of these lands in a way that's respectful to the local community that's around it, but we also have to make sure that we're benefiting the community across the city of Kitchener. So those are really the key points that I wanted to talk upon, and we're going to get community input on all of these as we go forward. But again, I just wanted to offer my congratulations to staff on bringing forward a strategy that's going to let us address a brand new way of making our city great and amazing without having to put any additional burden on taxpayers, especially in the time of COVID.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. Next, we have Councillor Johnston.
Yes, thank you. And I just want to reiterate that this is a bold strategy that is coming at a time when we need to put some fresh eyes on how we come out of the pandemic. And I think what we did with EDIF was bold at the time. And it still would be, actually. It brought amazing investment into our community. It brought new sectors into our community, the knowledge economy, and a lot of investment that we desperately needed. I see this as the next step in kind of where we need to go. And one of the most exciting nights I've had as a counselor was attending Ideas of the Brave last fall, when we brought together leaders from all different parts of the community to talk about what they envision and where they want to go. And that's where much of the Make It Kitchener ideas came from. And I think that when our economy does well, our entire community does well. And it's a bold step to ensure that our community is on the forefront of economic development, and we're just going to keep moving forward. But at the same time as moving forward, we are bringing others along, and that's what I love about what this, what Make It Kitchener 2.0 does. It is also providing affordable housing. Yes, there'll be a lot of conversations around how we do it in community consultations as we move forward. But I really think it's a step in the right direction, and it's an exciting step. And I'm very proud of our staff for working towards this plan. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Johnson. Next, we have Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Acting Chair Singh. This Make It Kitchener 2.0 is what our citizens want. It's the result of a lot of engagement. This is our staff and us listening to what our citizens want. And this brings everybody along. The first Make It Kitchener, those investments leveraged more and more investment from all levels of government. And we have to play our part in this too. You know, the businesses we're going to help with our local businesses, they're our friends, they're our neighbors. They're the shops that we visit day in and day out. So yeah, we have to do our part as well. Again, bringing everyone along, it's so important. And this is what our citizens said. Let's do something about affordable housing. It's not only our responsibility, but we're going to play our part in it. We're going to do our part so the other levels of government can see that we've got some investment in affordable housing. We welcome it. We want it. The other parts of Make It Kitchener 2.0 are so critical to the economic success of our city in the years to come. And it'll do just the same as Edith #1 did. If we not made that investment, had the council of the day not passed that, we would have a derelict downtown. But now we're thriving and things are moving because of a bold decision by a great council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schneider. I also have Councillor Gazzola keyed back in. Councillor Gazzola, you said yourself you already made your comments, which you have already. It would be unfair to everyone else if I gave you an opportunity to speak again about comments, unless you have a question of staff, which I would give you that opportunity. But if you'd like to just add more comments, you've had your time.
Oh, I don't want to be unfair to anyone. Perhaps I can then ask a question.
Please.
If I'm not wrong, I could ask staff, do parking garages and that make payment in lieu of taxes, which are similar to property taxes? So they do pay taxes.
Through the chair, I may ask our CFO if he knows the exact answer. I'm not 100% clear on what if they do. I certainly know they pay a dividend to through the enterprise, but our CFO may know the exact answer.
Through the acting mayor, yes, parking lots as a commercial enterprise would pay property taxes.
Is there anything else, Councillor Gazzola?
You're not going to let me make another quick comment?
If it's under a minute, go ahead.
And I just want to, Councillor Davey is correct. From 2010 till now, there have been taxes. They have been below the inflation rate. The point is that between 2003 and 2010, the taxpayers of those eras had to pay a great deal of the interest debt on the original EDIF. So that's when the taxes were thrown out of line. The other thing is, and Councillor Galloway is very correct in in the statements she's making, and she realizes there is an impact on the taxpayer, and that it's a very high level document, and very correct. My experience tells me, though, however, when things come out in high level documents, they become somewhat chiseled in stone, and then it's very difficult to make any changes going forward. Thank you for the extra minute 30, minute 40 minutes. Thank you.
That's fine. I don't see anyone else. Oh, Councillor Chapman, would you like to make a comment?
Yeah, I'd just like to make a comment. I must say that it's a pretty detailed document. I will be supporting it because I'm going to trust that the things that and the way that we move forward will be done in such a way that there will be proper consultation, that neighborhood associations will be considered stakeholders and not just members of the public, and that we will not be just selling off properties for the strict benefit of a developer, but that the community will be taken into account with every step of the way. So I'm going to trust that will actually happen, and therefore I will support what's being presented here, because I do think that there are a lot of areas that are covered, and I think that it's in my view worth supporting.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. I'll just, I had my opportunity to have my say during committee and I spoke at length. I'll just briefly make a couple more points as others have as well. The way I see it is that as ambassadors of this community, we are too often encouraged to, showcase all that our community has to offer. Definitely speak of opportunities for businesses to invest in our community. Well, I like to say, how can we ask businesses to invest here if we're unwilling to invest ourselves? This is a strategy that says that we're committed for a long-term commitment to this community because we see a lot of gains that can come out of this. And as I said from my earlier comments, this is a strategy that's not new. It's been tried and tested. We've already seen the benefits from it. There's a crane in the picture behind me. If you look in our downtown, there are 5 cranes currently. And prior to 2010 or in our 2000s or 1990s, guess what? There were hardly any cranes, if not one, perhaps in a decade. The development that's happened of $1.9 billion from the onset of EDIF investments when they started, much of that, if not perhaps close to all of it, is contributed due to EDIF investment. That's $1.9 billion of development that's gaining us tax revenue. Growth that may still have happened, but may have happened in the outlying areas of our community, in our suburbs, contributing to suburban sprawl, and which is not good for the environment, it's not good for the economy, it's not good for the taxation. The development that happens in our core is done in a sustainable and a cost-effective manner that gives better dividend and returns to the tax base and to our citizens. And it's because of this that we should be supporting this initiative. I don't see this as a roadmap. So far, the strategy is a compass that points us in the right direction. The roadmap will come. With that, I will ask for, well, it's a recorded vote, so I'll try to remember the order. First, I think it's Councillor Davey.
Thank you. I'm certainly in favor.
Councillor Schneider.
In full support, in favor.
Councillor Gazzola. Your mic.
Sorry, not in favor.
Councillor Michaud.
I'm in favor.
Councillor Gallery-Sealock.
I am in favor.
Councillor Ioannidis.
In favor.
Councillor Johnston.
In favor.
Councillor Chapman.
In favor.
And Councillor Marsh.
In favor.
And as the chair, I'm also in favor, and that carries. Thank you very much. All right, on to, and honestly, I thought because this was already supported through the committee and or the one of special counsel as in principle, I did not expect this item to take as long as it did. There are still a number of the other delegations, so we'll move on to them. We have Jack Gibbons for Ontario Clean Air Alliance regarding the gas-fired electric generation, which is the item under new business, a motion that's being brought forward by Councillor Chapman. Mr. Gibbons, so you have 5 minutes to make your presentation. And my apologies for having to make you wait so long.
Thank you very much, Acting Mayor Singh and members of council. I'm Jack Gibbons from the Ontario Clean Air Alliance. And I'm here tonight to speak to you about in support of Councillor Chapman's motion, which requests the province of Ontario to phase out our gas-fired power plants by 2030. The Ontario Clean Air Alliance was established in 1997 to promote the phase out of Ontario's 5 dirty coal-fired power plants. And I'm very pleased to note that in February 1999, the city of Kitchener was the first city in the province of Ontario to call for the phasing out of our dirty coal-fired power plants. I'm also pleased to note that thanks to the strong leadership of Ontario's former Minister of the Environment, Elizabeth Whitmer, In 2002, the Government of Ontario committed our province to phasing out all of our coal-fired power plants by 2015. And as a result of this strong leadership from elected officials from the City of Kitchener, the greenhouse gas pollution from our power plants fell by 93% between 2005 and 2017. Unfortunately, since 2017, the pollution from our gas-fired power plants has started to rise again. And according to Ontario's Independent Electricity System Operator, the greenhouse gas pollution from our gas-fired power plants will increase by more than 300% by 2025 and by more than 400% by 2040. And if this occurs, we will lose 35% of the greenhouse gas pollution reduction benefits that we achieved by phasing out the dirty coal-fired power plants. And if we ramp up the greenhouse gas pollution from our gas-fired power plants, then the province of Ontario will not be able to achieve its 2030 climate target. But fortunately, we have much better ways to keep our lights on. Instead of importing fracked gas from Western Canada and Pennsylvania, we can phase out our gas-fired power plants by investing in energy efficiency, by investing in wind and solar energy, and by purchasing low-cost, clean water power from the province of Quebec. So, Acting Mayor Singh and members of council, I'm here tonight to ask you to support Councillor Chapman's motion, which requests the province of Ontario to once again be a climate leader by phasing out our gas-fired power plants by 2030. Thank you for your attention, and if you have any questions, I'll be pleased to answer them.
Yes, we do have a few questions for you. Councillor Marsh.
Thank you very much. Actually, I don't have any questions for you, Mr. Gibbons, but I just want to thank you very much for all the work that you and your organization do. You know, as a person who grew up in Kitchener, I remember smog days were a thing, and we had them so frequently, and now we don't. And it's thanks to the fact that we don't have those coal-powered plants anymore that that somehow the way that our land is, that it would hover in our area. So so thank you for all the advocacy that helped to make that happen.
Thank you.
Councillor Gazzola.
I always have to remember to unmute. Sorry. Mr. Gibbons, I just want to let you know that on the advice of Councillor Chapman the other night, I read the report that was put out by your organization. I used it for a bedtime read at 2 a.m. It was an excellent report. I didn't even fall asleep reading it. It did raise a few questions. I really appreciate having the opportunity to read the report. I wonder, I just have 2 or 3 questions. I wonder if you can tell me, what is the total number of kilowatt hours required for the province of Ontario, for the whole province? What is our need, our use? Do you know what? Have any idea? Or?
Yes, Ontario's total annual electricity consumption is about 135 billion kilowatt hours.
Okay, that's what I sort of calculated to. Can you tell me right now, what is the source? What of that hydro generation? Like, hopefully there's no coal fired, but how is it split?
Okay, so about 24% is water power, about 58% is nuclear, about 2% is solar, about 8% is wind last year, and last year about 6% was gas fired.
Just another question, going down the road when we inevitably get or quickly get to electric automobiles, how will that impact everything? Will
Well,
that
yes, electric vehicles are very good, especially if we have a carbon free electricity system, and that's why it's important to phase out the gas plants. But one important thing to know about electric cars is they're very energy efficient. They're much more energy efficient than gasoline cars, and therefore their impact on the demand for electricity is much less than most people would expect. For example, if we had 1 million cars in Ontario that were on electricity, that would increase our electricity demand by only 2%. And if all of our cars were electric vehicles, that would only increase our electricity demand by 17%.
okay? That's what I was driving at. I wanted to see, another question I have: is it possible for a company like Kitchener-Wilmot Hydro to buy power directly from Quebec, or is that something that has to be?
Well, that's a very good question, and legally it is possible for them to do it, but the province of Ontario has put up a barrier to make it not financially attractive for an individual municipality to do so. They would still be subject to the global adjustment charge. There's two charges for wholesale electricity in Ontario: the hourly Ontario energy price and the global adjustment charge. The global adjustment charge is by far the highest of the two charges, and the government of Ontario, to discourage local utilities from buying directly from Quebec, says if you buy from Quebec, you still have to pay the global adjustment charge. So it wouldn't be in your local utility's financial self-interest to do so. Now, there's one exception to that, is the City of Cornwall. The City of Cornwall is not connected to the Hydro One transmission grid. They get their power directly with a direct connection with Hydro-Quebec, and therefore they're not subject to this special rule. And the City of Cornwall has got 100% of their power from Hydro-Quebec for 50 years, and the City of Cornwall has by far the lowest electricity rates of any city in Ontario.
Okay, one final question. I hope you can help me to understand this. It just seems, there are two sides to every story, but it just seems inconceivable that the province would not want to buy electricity from Quebec or use other means that you have suggested, and instead want to refurbish all our nuclear plants. The margin is so far apart. I just don't understand how anyone can rationalize. What is it about the province that they're going in that direction?
Well, yeah, it makes absolutely no sense. We could import power from Quebec via a long-term contract at 1/2 or 1/3 the cost of rebuilding our aging nuclear reactors. But you must realize the nuclear lobby is very politically powerful in Ontario. Our two biggest electric utilities are Ontario Power Generation and Bruce Power. They supply us with more than 80% of our electricity, and they, quite frankly, don't want competition from Quebec.
Thank you very much. You've answered my question. I felt there had to be some lobby groups out there that are gaining the ear of the government. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right, Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, hi, Jack. Thank you for coming in and speaking to us on this. I also wanted to ask about the nuclear plants, but I think you've answered my questions. Could you elaborate a bit further on how Quebec would fit into Ontario's electricity needs?
Well, yes, we already have numerous interconnections with Quebec. We are buying power from Quebec on the spot market, but we're not buying nearly as much power as we could with the existing transmission lines. And for example, last year we could have tripled our power imports from Quebec with our existing transmission lines. And so we're recommending that we buy power from Quebec for two reasons. One, because it's very low cost and it can help us phase out our gas-fired power plants. And also another important feature about Quebec is they have these giant hydroelectric reservoirs. And those reservoirs can provide backup for our wind and solar energy. As we all know, the wind doesn't always blow and the sun doesn't always shine. And at the moment, we're using gas-fired power plants to back up wind and solar energy. But the Hydro-Quebec's reservoirs could also provide that storage or battery function for our wind and solar energy. And in fact, according to a Massachusetts Institute of Technology study, Quebec's water reservoirs are the lowest cost carbon-free backup or storage or battery option for wind and solar energy.
One last question. What would it take for Ontario to produce its own water generated hydro?
Well, we already get about 24% of our electricity from water. And until about 1960, we got virtually 100% of our electricity from water. But now in Ontario, we've really tapped out all of our low-cost sources of water power. And now if you want to move to new generation within Ontario, solar and wind are by far the lowest cost sources of new renewable supply for Ontario.
So it's cheaper for us to buy that hydro from Quebec rather than trying to reopen plants or looking for new sources.
Well, yeah, we already get a significant amount of power from our own plants, like the Seratimbec generating station at Niagara Falls. They're absolutely fantastic sources of clean supply. But yes, we don't have new low-cost sources of water power in Ontario, but Quebec does have a large surplus from their existing facilities. Most of that surplus is now being exported to the US on the spot market at very low prices, and it could be diverted to Ontario to help us phase out our gas-fired power plants and lower our electricity bills.
Okay, thank you so much for your presentation and your comments.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gibbons. Councillor Davey, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, just one quick question. Councillor Gazzola actually asked the majority of the questions that I had. It was great, actually. Just on the transmission from Quebec. Now, this isn't something that they can turn on tomorrow. Like there would be, I would presume there'd be significant investment and time to build new lines, like because Quebec's pretty far away from our central areas, like the GTA, for example. So, is that like how long would it take if there was a sudden change of heart in the government in order for them to implement that technology?
Okay, well, I just want to emphasize there are the existing lines which would allow us to triple our imports tomorrow. But yes, we also advocate building new transmission lines because this is such a good source of clean, low-cost power. And the Independent Electricity System Operator has analyzed a number of options for expanding our transmission links with Quebec. And the best one they've shown is a new 20-kilometer transmission line in the city of Ottawa in an existing Hydro One transmission corridor. And so that I would suggest to you could be done within a few years. That's relatively simple because it's in an existing transmission corridor. It's only 20 kilometers, and that new transmission line would be in the city of Ottawa, but it would be connected to the Hydro One provincial transmission grid and deliver power all across Ontario.
And would that have?
So that's one option. That's the best option. There's other options, but again, I emphasize what the Ontario Clean Air Alliance is calling for, and Councillor Chapman's motion is calling for, is to achieve the complete phase out by 2030. And that reflects the fact that to get to build new transmission lines will take time. And that's why we've adopted the 2030 timeline for the 100% phase out in order to be reasonable, because we do realize that building new transmission lines can take time.
Okay, yeah, sorry, that answered another one of my questions. And on one of the final clauses, it says to an interim cap of 2.5 megatons on our gas plants. Do you know what it is currently?
Well, the 2.5 megatons is the level of the greenhouse gas pollution from our power plants in 2017. So just 3 years ago. So that's what we're saying is, let's try to get back to the 2017 level as soon as possible. And that certainly could be done quickly in the next year or 2 or 3 by importing more power from Quebec with the existing transmission lines, by stopping exporting gas-fired power to the US, and by ramping up our energy efficiency programs. And of course, also new wind and solar facilities can be built in 1 or 2 years.
Okay, and last question then. So a lot of this seems like pretty self-evident to me. And is there anything, just so I have more of a fuller understanding, in your opinion, aside, I understood the nuclear lobby interests and that sort of thing. Is there any other factor that's holding this back? Like, is there ever any concern with like interprovincial sovereignty on energy production or anything like that? Like, I'm just not understanding why this is something we have to argue for.
Well, yes, I mean, Ontario, because of the strength of the nuclear lobby, has had a policy of virtual electricity separatism for decades. It makes no economic sense whatsoever. And as the city of Cornwall has demonstrated, they've got a secure, low-cost power from Quebec for 50 years. In the 2003 blackout, their lights stayed on. So there's no good reason why we don't do these, why we don't pursue these lower-cost options, which are energy efficiency, made in Ontario renewables, and purchasing water power from our next-door neighbor.
Thanks for taking the time this evening, Mr. Gibbons.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. There are no other questions for you, Mr. Gibbons. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have Megan Rutten regarding, again, same item, gas-fired electric generation. Megan, you have 5 minutes. Jeff, is Megan still with us?
Through your acting chair, she is on the call. I just asked her.
I just didn't unmute myself. I apologize.
Thank you, Diana. Sorry.
Sorry
Yes,
for that.
no,
So,
you too. You have 5 minutes.
okay, thank you. My name is Meg Rattan Walker, and I come to the council as a mother and climate activist. I will be calling natural gas by, in my mind, a more accurate term. I will call it fracked fossil gas. I am here to support Councillor Chapman's motion for the City of Kitchener to ask Ontario to phase out all of the use of fracked fossil gas by 2030. So as of this year, all of the region's cities have declared a climate emergency, and our local politicians have again and again told us that they support the Paris Agreement and climate action locally. But Ontario's Premier has in fact been actively undermining our collective climate goals to the detriment of our health and finances. And in the absence of global and provincial leadership, our communities need to act immediately with all urgency to correct the province's course. As per Councillor Chapman's motion, Ontario doesn't need to use fracked fossil gas for homes or electricity. Ramping up our gas use will undo all of the progress we made as a province by removing coal from our grid. Fracked fossil gas is arguably only slightly less intensive an option than coal when we consider the health and environmental damage that comes with fracking. For instance, recent studies show that fracking generates radioactivity in the communities that it happens in. It's bad for groundwater. It's not just about fracking happening in Ontario or in our communities, but in other communities, especially racialized communities. A lot of environmental damage is invisible. So we have to consider these health and environmental damages when we talk about using fossil gas. The advances in zero carbon energy systems have completely undermined the purpose of fracked gas as a climate friendly bridge fuel. We don't need it. We don't have the carbon budget for it. There is no financial incentive in expanding our gas capacity in Ontario with renewable prices falling the way they are, especially when relying on the US fracked gas industry will make us more vulnerable to political turmoil out of the United States. The fracking industry is also in financial crisis and only survives through debt and through the illusion that it's here to stay. The fossil fuel industry needs to end. At most, by 2050, we need to take control of our planetary systems, and the fossil fuel industry cannot have a say into whether or not it should exist into the future the way that it exists now. We don't want to lock in our dependence on an unreliable planet-killing industry. And I say this to you as a mother of a 6-year-old. The world needs to have its emissions by 2030 for our children to have the best shot at a climate-safe future. That's to keep within the Paris goal of under 1.5 degrees. That requires immediate action. There are no small actions. Everything is needed. Every bit of warming matters. We already know that tipping points and feedback loops amplify the climate crisis, and so all emissions count against us. Again, every bit of warming matters. We cannot afford even a small percentage of gas running our grid. Phasing out fossil gas in Ontario would reaffirm our collective dedication to our declared climate goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Megan. I have no question. Oh, we do have one. Councillor Chapman, go ahead.
Well, it's not a question, but I just want to thank you, Megan, for taking the time to come in and give your perspective on this.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you, Megan, once more. Next is Kay Reamer Watts.
Acting Mayor Singh, Kay was not able to stay on the call, so there has been written submissions emailed to members of council that'll form part of the public record as well.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think that email will be sent to members of council to review. Next is Mike Morris. Hi, Mike.
Hello, good evening. Thank you, Acting Mayor Singh. Wonderful to see all of council tonight as well. I wanted to also just start with a brief thanks specifically for council's support at Community and Infrastructure Services last Monday of CSD 20004, advancing the city's work on equity, anti-racism, Indigenous initiatives, and social justice issues. I deeply appreciate your recognition of what was an important and timely opportunity. What an important and timely opportunity this really was to continue momentum built up by so many across our community, particularly organizers at Land Back Camp, the African, Caribbean, and Black Network, and Black Lives Matter Waterloo Region. I also wanted to recognize staff for their leadership in recommending the Equity, Anti-Racism, and Indigenous Initiatives team that was approved by council. A theme that I'm increasingly proud of this council for is that you seem to be finding constructive ways to engage in big challenges. Over a decade ago, I was in front of council sharing our community's first climate change action plan. It was unanimously supported with a target. And at the time, climate change wasn't seen as too big of a problem to engage in. Similarly, last week, anti-Black racism and Indigenous reconciliation also weren't seen as too big of a problem. Instead, you've recognized that the city has a critical role to play, and I'm glad for that. This is the same tonight, and it's why I'm here in support of Councillor Chapman's motion. This motion recognizes that multiple levels of government must work together to make progress on the big challenges our community faces. Both economically and environmentally, phasing out gas-fired electricity generation, as some of you have alluded to, is kind of a no-brainer. If the province were to do so, this would actually support our local efforts the city has been making for a long time to take action on climate change. Economically, Jack was very articulate in sharing one of the best examples. This is Hydro-Quebec, has for many years offered us as a province hydro-powered electricity on a firm 20-year contract at 5 cents a kilowatt hour. And the city of Cornwall is the best example. Their hydro rates or their electricity rates are more than 50% lower than Hamilton and Toronto as examples. Environmentally, Ontario's target of 30% by 2030 from 2005 levels is already lower than what International Panel on Climate Change scientists are calling for, lower than the Paris Agreement. And unsurprisingly, increasing gas-fired electricity emissions would make it significantly more difficult for the province to even meet this already insufficient target and actually erode the gains we have made from phasing out coal. In contrast, this request of the Government of Ontario lines up with your climate emergency declaration from last year. And if the government were to follow it, it would help the city to meet its own 80 by 50 climate target set through Climate Action WR by avoiding increases in our local emissions attributed to our electricity grid. And so for all these reasons, I'm optimistic that Council will support the motion, and I'm glad to answer any questions if I can be of service there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And you gave input on 2 items that we will be voting on. So thank you. It's appreciated. The more input received, the better. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, again, I don't have a question. Mike, I just want to thank you for coming in tonight and supporting this motion, and for all your engagement in the community. And, you know, it's demonstrated in your comments tonight on other issues that we've been grappling with. So thank you so much, and look forward to working with you into the future.
Thanks once more, Mike.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman.
Yes.
And that is all the delegations that we have for tonight. So Councillor Chapman, if you can bring forward your motion, and if you can read just the therefore be it resolved components of the motion.
I just wanted to make some comments as a sort of a preamble, if that's all right with you, Acting Mayor.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So in April 2019, Environment Canada announced that Canada was warming faster than the world average. Climate change is real, and here in Canada, weather extremes are evident. The hotter days are hotter and storms more violent. On June 24th, 2020, Kitchener Council declared a climate emergency. And at that time, the city agreed to cut greenhouse gas emissions by 80% by 2050. While the city has made some great advances, there's more that can and needs to be done. As we know, the Ford government has cut efficiency programs. They have canceled conservation plans and wind and solar contracts. Without provincial support, local governments will be unable to achieve their community and corporate climate goals, Kitchener included. Incentive programs designed to lower costs of residential and business owners have been cut. So here's what we know. We know that Ontario's demand for electricity will rise by approximately 1% per year. We know that the Pickering nuclear station will close in 2024. Virtually all of our need for new electricity resources due to rising demand and the closure of the Pickering nuclear station will be met by increasing the output of the province's gas-fired power plants. We know that Quebec produces enough water-generated electricity to cover Ontario's needs. We know that water power is one of the cheapest and cleanest forms of electricity. Solar, wind, and geothermal energy are also inexpensive or less expensive non-fossil fuel alternatives. And we know that rebuilding Ontario's aging nuclear reactors would cost more than $25 billion. According to Ontario's Independent Electricity System Operator, IESO, the greenhouse gas pollution from Ontario's gas-fired power plants will increase by more than 300% by 2025 and 400% by 2040 if the province uses natural gas to replace aging nuclear plants and to meet growing demand for electricity from population growth and increased electrification. If something is not done now to stop the increase in gas-fired power plants, we will all be impacted. Our electricity rates will go up, our environment will be further compromised, and we will not meet our targets. We have a national and international climate crisis that needs to be addressed. So I'm hoping that you will support my motion to put pressure on the provincial government to phase out the gas-fired power plants and find renewable alternatives. So I will go to the therefore be it resolved that the City of Kitchener requests the Government of Ontario to place an interim cap of 2.5 megatons per year on our gas plants' greenhouse gas pollution and develop and implement a plan to phase out all gas-fired electricity generation by 2030 to ensure that Ontario meets its climate targets. And I would like a recorded vote, please.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Councillor Chapman. I have Councillor Gazzola. You have a question or you want to make your comment?
Well, it's actually a question and a comment.
Okay, ask your question first.
And I've come to appreciate the importance of your motion, Councillor Chapman. And I was just wondering if you would add not only circulating this to local area municipalities, it should be circulated to all members of AMO. This is something that affects everyone in the province. So there is a circulation channel there that we should take advantage of.
I'd be happy to add that to the resolution.
We'll just consider that as a friendly amendment.
Yeah.
We'll have friendly amendments. Councillor, is anything else? Councillor Gazzola, do you want to?
No, while I'm at it, I just as a comment,
Before you start, Gazzola, because you would be taking over if I can't chair. I just need a quick moment. So you're speaking, and after you, it's Councillor Ioannidis, and I will be back shortly. Okay. So after you're done speaking, it's Councillor Ioannidis who's next up.
And I control that from here.
That's right.
I have so much power, I don't know how to deal with it.
I'm sure you can manage. Thank you.
And I just want to say I appreciate the report that's brought here by Councillor Chapman, having read a fair amount about it now, and not realizing I realized the province, I thought they did a good job to get away from coal-fired plants, but I didn't realize that they were really going back into the pit in the direction that they were moving. And when I see that there really is an opportunity out there to make everyone better off in the province by taking advantage of Quebec's cheap hydro, it is crazy that we don't move in that direction. I don't understand the nuclear lobby and as how they get away with it, because the difference in pricing is so great. It's hard to understand. And going down the road, we're going to be going to electric cars very shortly, and we need to get our land electricity in place so that it's available to help out with our electric cars. So thank you for bringing forward the motion, and I totally support it. So now what do I have to do? I don't have any controls here. Councillor Ioannidis, you're up.
Thank you. I guess I'm having a lot of difficulties as well. I'm not sure. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
I'd be more than happy to second the recommendation, and thanks, Councillor Chapman, for bringing this forward. It's about time that this moves forward and let our voices know. Let our voices be heard to the province. And it's a shame that we have some of the incentives and all that stuff reduced. I'm glad this is here and look forward to seeing this move through.
Thank you, Councillor Ioannidis. I see no one else in the queue, so I'll quickly just make a comment. I think this is great advocacy, especially with the phenomenal work previous councils and Sustainable Waterloo as a community, how we've advocated, and I think we're in the forefront in our environmental initiatives. And so it's only right that we advocate on items that can make a fundamental change to our economy and reducing the greenhouse effect. So the comment that quickly I want to say is the fact that I think we're finally at a point, aspect of technology where we can look to more sustainable sources of power through solar and wind. that we can, or we should start striving towards moving off of, natural gas or a fossil fuel based power generation. So I think we need to continue on this advocacy and continue to ask until the important decisions get made and we start, as I said, for economic development, investing in our economy or investing in our community. Well, advocacy such as this, or shifting away from fossil fuel power generation, we would be investing in our future. So thank you, Councillor Chapman, for bringing this motion forward. Recorded vote has been asked. So I'm not as, I'm not as quick as pointing out all the right persons for each particular ward. So I won't go backward. I'll just go from the front, from Ward 1 to Ward 10 again. So Councillor Davey.
I'm in support.
And then Councillor Schneider.
In support.
Councillor Gazzola. Your mic, Councillor Gazzola.
I'm sorry, in support.
Okay. Councillor Michaud.
I support this.
Thank you. Councillor Galloway-Seedlock.
I am in favor.
Thank you. Councillor Ioannidis.
In favor.
Councillor Johnston.
In favor.
And then Councillor Chapman.
In favor.
And Councillor Marsh.
In favor, wholeheartedly.
Excellent. And I'm also in favor. And that is supported unanimously. So thank you very much. Next item is also in new business, and that's a motion being brought forward by Councillor Michaud. If you want to speak on it.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I just have a couple of things to say in advance of the motion. Last year, parking on boulevards during winter months proved beneficial for many Kitchener residents throughout the city, as well as operation crews clearing the roads. It reduced the likelihood of damage and accidents when plowing. The COVID-19 pandemic has been stressful and challenging in one way or another for everyone. For many, it's resulted in more people living in one household and an increase in population within the neighborhoods. Family members are now home 24/7 due to job losses or working from home on a permanent basis, and university, college, and high school students are schooling at home. In many areas of the city, particularly the suburbs, this has resulted in up to 3 or more cars within one household requiring more space to park. Allowing residents to park on their boulevards during the pandemic would relieve some of the pressure on the side streets and in the households and make the streets safer. With that, I wish to bring forward the following motion. Whereas on October 28, 2019, Council approved a pilot project to allow parking on paved boulevards citywide be made permanent and be permitted annually from December 1 through March 31st. And that in addition, guideline be added to that program that requires any vehicle parked on a boulevard within a school zone from Monday to Friday to be removed by 8 a.m. as outlined in Community Service Department Report CSD 19-031 and further. Whereas due to the COVID-19 pandemic, many residents have seen household compositions increase and parking needs change and have requested to be allowed to park on paved boulevards citywide until COVID-19 pandemic has ended. Therefore, be it resolved that the parking on the boulevard paved area of a driveway between the sidewalk and curb and road edge be permitted until the state of emergency declared by the City of Kitchener under the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act has ended, subject to the conditions outlined in Community Services Report CSD-19-031.
Thank you, Michelle. I have some questions or comments. Councillor Johnston, do you have a question or?
Actually, I was going to second it.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Johnston and Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Singh. I just want to thank Councillor Michaud for bringing this forward. It's a much needed option for some in each of our wards. So thank you for bringing this forward. I'm really happy to support it.
Yes, thank you. Share that sentiment. All right. I don't see anyone else. Oh, Councillor Marsh, go ahead.
Sorry, I just remembered that I had a question when I was reading that motion. I think it's more of a question of staff, unless Councillor Michaud has already looked into this. Are we going to keep the, I noticed in the wording, you got it so that that is going to be active until we remove the state of emergency. And I'm just wondering, would it not be a scenario where we might declare the state of emergency over, but not be in a full state of recovery and therefore might still need this parking need?
That could be possible. I mean, this is just the first part. Yes, I agree, Councillor Marsh, that is a good idea. I think the state of emergency is going to last a lot longer than anticipated, but I understand what you're saying as well.
So perhaps we can ask staff to comment.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Ms. McNeil is on.
Through Acting Mayor Singh, staff have no opposition to extending this further. I don't know what the preference of council would be, if you want to relook at it once the emergency declaration has been removed, or whether you'd like to look at it from a longer term perspective, which we really don't have an end date at this point. So it would really be up to the preference of council as to how you want to deal with it. Staff has no preference.
So if I may, I still have the floor. I just want to suggest that we just keep it as it is. It's up to you, Councillor Michaud, but that we just ask staff to help us remember that when we remove the state of emergency, that we've got certain, consequences that we might need to then deal with later at that time.
I agree. I'm hoping that through this process that we have, we can come back with some. This isn't a pilot. This isn't a pilot project, but we could come back with some results of how this is working. Whether gauging the neighborhoods. I know in Cambridge, I think it's Cambridge. They actually go neighborhood by neighborhood, and people. I think they literally poll people who wants the boulevard and who doesn't, and that's how it's decided where it's happening. So this could turn into something a little more involved than just blanketing the whole city as boulevards, because there are some areas I'm sure in the city that don't need it or don't want it. So I think this might be just a good step. But I think for the purpose of this motion, it's just to get people through this tough time during the pandemic when their houses are full and their driveways are full and nobody knows where they're going to park. So I think it's just as simple as that for now.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Marsh. All right, so I will call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. Thank you. So we are at point of questions and answers.
Point of order, Councillor Singh.
Oh, yes.
Acting Mayor Singh. I think we've skipped over the reports of the committee with Community Infrastructure Services.
We did. I just skipped to unfinished business. Do this as quickly as possible. Yes, so we'll head to the reports of the committee. So I'll send it off to you, Councillor Galloway-Sealock, as Chair of Community and Infrastructure Services.
Thank you very much, Acting Mayor Singh. It's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dave Schneider that the 5 items be approved. I'm going to quickly list them off because I think they are of extreme importance this week. The assisted program from the Working Center grant, the land sale at the Ottawa Street right-of-way. Number 3 is advancing the city's work on equity, anti-racism, Indigenous issues, and social justice issues. Number 4 is the natural gas rates. And number 5 is the 2020 Cycling and Trails Master Plan.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Galloway-Sealock. There's a question by Councillor Gazzola.
Yes, I would like to separate items number 3 and 5 to deal with them separately, if we could.
Yes.
And I have some questions on item number 3.
Okay. When you're ready.
And I'd like both 3 and 5 to be recorded votes, okay?
Okay.
Yeah, okay, going to item number 3, it's dealing with our equity and diversity and inclusion program. I have a couple of questions that I want to follow up with Miss McGoldrick.
Okay.
Is she here? Or? Yes, I see the name.
He's there.
Yeah, thank you. Last week, I asked you several questions relating to the city of Kitchener and our response to call to action is set out in the TRC document. And I just wanted to share with council what I asked. I asked for several detailed questions as to 2 or 3 different clauses in that document that that referred directly to municipalities, and you did give me a response, but as far as I was concerned, that none of the responses really made this issue an urgent priority, as stated at this time. Can you just, I don't know if it's right to ask you what, it's been classified as an urgent priority, but what makes it that? We seem to be meeting the calls to action for municipalities.
So through the acting mayor, Singh, so in terms of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report, there are a number of, there's 94 calls to action. Some of them are specific to municipalities. Many of them are broader and in terms of the intent, speak to things like culture, sport, history, and different ways to commemorate. And so while municipalities may not be specifically mentioned, there are certainly the work that we do within our communities are directly related to the intent of the calls to action related to the TRC. But more importantly, the TRC calls to action are not intended to be a checklist of completed and done. It really is about developing an ongoing relationship with Indigenous communities that we serve and understanding the unique needs of the First Nations, Métis and Inuit within the city of Kitchener and within the broader region. And so certainly this work is really all about working with Indigenous communities. And to be quite honest, Councillor Gazzola, we have, as a city, we have not done a great job of that in developing those relationships and understanding needs. And through the dialogue that we've had more recently, we're understanding that there are many more gaps than, than we had awareness of. And so I would say there is urgency to this work. We've heard it from the community. We're seeing it, and our awareness is growing on a day-to-day basis in terms of what the issues are and where we need to move in terms of first in developing those relationships, and then in understanding how we can better serve the Indigenous communities.
Okay, thank you for that. Just to be clear, though, 85 of the 94 calls to action referred directly to the federal and provincial government. Okay, can you tell me where the issue of giving the Indigenous group a parcel of land in the Victoria Park, where does that stand? Is that now over, or?
No, in terms of the land back camp that within the formerly occupied Victoria Park, they're now in Waterloo Park. We have been having weekly ongoing dialogue with the land back camp organizers. We've been sharing some of the work we've been doing. And in fact, there was a recent article last week around the work in the Huron Natural Area and looking at how we can make park spaces more welcoming. We believe there's opportunities to look at what can be done within Victoria Park and want to advance that discussion. And I believe the land back camp organizers recognize that that dialogue is not only with the land back camp, but the broader Indigenous communities around these spaces. And that's, that's a body of work that needs to take place.
Yeah, another request of that group was that the establishment of an advisory committee whose members would be paid for their participation on that committee. Where does that request stand?
And so we've had discussion around, and in fact, when we first, this speaks to, from a City of Kitchener perspective, our lack of relationship building within the communities, and the fact that we were not, we have not had awareness and insight and direct dialogue into the Wellbeing Waterloo Region, First Nation, Métis and Inuit advisory and advocacy circle. So not only have we been having conversations with the Land Back Camp, we've been looking to see how we can advance reconciliation with broader Indigenous communities, and certainly through conversation with the circle. At this point, until we have relationships built within communities, it would be premature to advance a specific advisory committee without understanding the roles that the circle's playing and the different organizations. So there's more learning to be done there, I would say.
Okay, I've heard from some people that there was a lot of discussion with the people, the group that took over the land bank camp at Victoria Park, but that there was little or no discussion with elders of the other Indigenous groups who don't seem to, who I understand were not consulted on these actions. Is that correct, or am I being misled there?
So in terms of conversation with broader Indigenous community members, it has been around how do we advance reconciliation, has been the primary focus of the discussion. We did take the staffing model also to the Wellbeing Waterloo Region Circle for feedback on the model as well. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but we have been, myself, I've met twice, and the broader staff team have met 3 times with the circle.
Okay, my final question, and thank you, by the way, for taking the time during the past week to answer many of my questions. The call to action number 57, which is the one that I felt really totally applied to the municipal level of government, was the provision of training for staff and for members of council. Now, I noticed today we received a couple of notices from the region who have set up training sessions for this purpose in December. Now, when that is, does that, if we all attend that and participate in that, does that satisfy that call to action number 57?
So that's the training is a good starting point. You'll see that 57 refers to the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. It refers to treaties and Aboriginal rights, Indigenous law, Aboriginal Crown relations. There's a lot of, and of course, the intercultural competency, conflict resolution, human rights, and anti-racism. That's a lot to deliver in an hour-and-a-half session. So I would suggest that the training is a really good starting point. Staff following that training, we would like to understand, what additional resources council would like to see in terms of Indigenous awareness.
Okay, thank you very much. I have a comment that I would like to make when at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Councillor Marsh?
Mine is comment also.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions, so Councillor Marsh?
Well, first I want to thank Ms. McGoldrick for her thorough and very clear answers. I really feel confident that the City of Kitchener's staff's team that is working on this issue has really got a fulsome understanding of where we're at and where we need to go. And that is why I'm so pleased to support this motion before us and really when we look at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's report as a full document, if we read that, and that's a 300 to 400 page document, more than 400 when you include all the references. That is something that we can take in, and if we just look at the calls to action and fine-tunely look at, oh well, which ones are for the municipalities only, we will just not be able to see the forest for the trees. We need to look at it as a whole, and we need to really take responsibility and really own what we need to unlearn and what we need to learn. So again, I'm so pleased to see this before us, and yeah, I'm happy to do a recorded vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Next, Councilor Gazzola.
Yes, thank you. As was reported, I did not support this resolution when it was considered by council last week. And in the course of my discussion, I used a poor choice of a word describing the number of emails we received regarding the topic. Now, if that offended anyone, to those people, I want to apologize. I did look at every one of them. To date, I have received 782 of them. And I am a bit of a rat pack. I never throw anything away. I have kept all 782 of them for future reference. Of those, there were about 30 which included some additional perspectives. The remainder were all exactly word for word. According to my calculations, respondents were about 42% from Kitchener and 58% from outside of Kitchener. And it was an overwhelming response from females. About 90% of the respondents were that. But so be it. And I appreciate the comments people have made. And like I say, I've looked at all of them. Most of them were the same. It was very easy. It was very easy to read with them. I would not like to make some comments as to my position on this matter. At no time did I ever say do nothing and leave it to other levels of government. I never said that in my comments. I did say it currently is not directly in our mandate at the local municipal level. Now, 2 years ago, a task force made up of 30 to 40 private citizens, staff members, and several members of council. Several meetings were held, but the process was interrupted with the onslaught of COVID-19. The task force did not send any reports to council. They have not completed their work. And the normal process for a task force is to study an issue and report back to council with some recommendations. Council then discusses those recommendations, and then usually turns it over to staff for a detailed review, resulting in a report back to council with desired actions to be pursued. We did not do all of that. All of that was jumped over. We jumped several steps. Now, somewhere along the process, and I don't know if it was the part of that process or something else, there was a study done comparing the demographics within City Hall to those with the community at large. I went through that entire report. Figures were produced that showed differences, but no studies were carried out to check the veracity of the figures or the cause for the differences. There were a number of speculations put forward, but no study carried out. Now, it is my opinion, and solely my opinion, that in order to fulfill some commitments made to the Land Back Camp Group, by whomever I own, staff have come up with a plan to meet those commitments. Suddenly, it became a potpourri of all the illnesses in our society. to be conquered with one fell swoop by establishing a whole new department at a time when we are struggling with the pandemic, which is causing serious economic stress. We're now going to not only deal with our wrongdoings with Indigenous people, but also correct all the racism issues that have plagued the world for so many years. And then to throw in, we've also thrown in poverty and homelessness into the pot. My whole argument is that it is premature for the city at this time to set up a new permanent department to deal with an issue that has not really been defined as to what the implications are for our city. There was very little discussion at council. It was a question, the decision was made before we even entered the council chambers. The only discussion at council was to who we are going to allow to apply for all of these positions. We're all aware of what's happening in the world, and I have never supported or condoned any of that action. I know a little bit about it, just a wee bit. I'm not a racist. I would like to say I wish we would have concentrated on defining the problem and then consider ways to deal with and correct it. I would not have, if we had gone through those processes, I would not have been opposed to perhaps the establishment, the hiring or the secondment of one person to get things moving. We jumped right over that. We went right to a full department. And at this time, the taxpayers of the city of Kitchener should not be asked to foot the bill for this global problem. So because of that, when the vote is called tonight, I will not be supporting the recommendation that's before us. I totally appreciate where we're at in society. I totally understand, totally agree with a lot of those things, but at this point, I cannot support the recommendation before us. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Schneider.
Okay, thank you, Acting Mayor Singh. I'm happy to bring forward this amendment that you had wanted to bring up, but since you are acting mayor tonight and chairing, you're not able to. So it's an honor for me to bring this up. It's an amendment to this that says that as part of the multi-year evaluation and accountability strategy that will be put into place to measure and report on the city's progress in the areas of equity, anti-racism, and Indigenous initiatives, staff be directed to include regularly scheduled communications and engagement with members of City Council. So that is the amendment being brought forward. And I would just like to quickly say that, you know, there is a problem. We've acknowledged it and we want to deal with it. It's global, it's federal, it's provincial, it's local, and we're dealing with it. And I'm proud that we are. And it's value for the members of this community, all members of this community.
Thank you very much, Councillor Schneider. Councillor Gallery-Sealock.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Singh. We just can't sit around and do nothing anymore. That's pretty much the end of it. We can't sit around and doing nothing anymore. We are putting a department in place and we're putting it in stages. We're not putting them all up. We're not hiring everybody all at once. And we're making sure that we're doing this right and that we're on the right track by hiring 1, 2, 3 people and then looking at what our results are. And with the amendment, it's going to come back to us and make sure that we're on the right track. We aren't dealing with the global part. We're dealing with the local part. That is our job, is to deal with the local part. And we know we have issues, so we have to do something. We can't sit around anymore, sit on our hands and do nothing and say it's not our problem. It is our problem and we need to do something about it.
Thank you, Councillor Galloway-Sealock, and I appreciate the clarity through your comments as well. Next is Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, I just want to say that I concur with what Councillor Galloway-Sealock just said, that this is not something new. We could say there's been over 500 years of oppression against Indigenous communities, and that's just one area that we're focusing on here. I do take your point, though, Councillor Gazzola, about the potpourri nature of what's being proposed here. And when we added in, homelessness and affordable housing, I questioned how that actually fits into equity, anti-racism and Indigenous initiatives. And I know they're interconnected, but I would personally like to see that as a separate committee, because I think they have very specific issues and that need to be resolved. But I do support this motion, and I think it is time. It is time that we take this seriously, and I think I'm proud to be on a council that's taking this step at this time. So that's all.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Councillor Johnson.
Yes, thank you. It is time. It was time a long time ago. So now we're acting on that. And as I mentioned at last week's meeting, this absolutely fits into the mandate of Kitchener Council as part of our strategic plan and the caring community piece, and which is where we're supporting work in equity, diversity, and inclusion. It absolutely fits in. And you know what? It's about time that that a local community took a leadership stance and moved on this. So there's so much work to be done. And I'm sure that as this new staff group starts, they're absolutely going to discover that there's a lot of work to be done. And I'm just proud that we're taking this initiative and getting started on it. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Galloway-Sealock, you had your hand. Did you want to say something else?
Nope, just forgot to lower my hand.
Okay. Thank you. I see no one else. So I'll quickly just make a couple brief comments. And this is definitely more so close to home. As I kind of shared through the committee, I moved here when I was only 8 with my parents and didn't speak the language. So, obviously when you come into a community, it's a different, difficult process to climatize to a new environment, to a new community, especially when you have more challenges. And unfortunately, not everyone is as kind. And unfortunately, persons that have gone through experience like mine do face some level of discrimination or bias as they try to settle in our community and contribute to our community. And I'd like to share it's a minority. It's very few, but even one occurrence is life impacting. It's something that you carry with you throughout your whole life. And I can say, when I came here as a young child, it's funny that we're talking about this item when I'm chairing the council meeting. Never did I imagine, that I would be ever, have the opportunity to chair a council meeting. And but at the same time, I had a lot of advantages, and that's why maybe I am sitting where I am, or I have the opportunity that I do. Unfortunately, not everyone is, not everyone is in that position, and and that's why there is a need for this work to ensure that we give all members of our community a fair chance, irrespective of who they are, what they look like, what kind of accent that they have, what their lived experience may be, what their preferences, orientations may be. what their lackings may be, just to give everyone a fair chance. And that's not easy. That requires hard work. That requires commitment as a community. That requires us coming together and saying, yes, this is important to us. And I'm comforted by my colleagues' commitment to this work. I'm pleased by the hard work that our staff have gone through in consultation with the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee. This didn't just come about. This took time. This took openness to hear what the needs of our community are, not just by the majority, but by the minority as well, because they are just as important. And you're right, this is a global issue, but you know what? Forget about the global issue. You focus on how do I change and improve, better my community. And this is what we're doing through this work. We're bettering our community, and we will be better for it. And so with that, I will call the vote. Actually, no, sorry, Councilor Gazzola asked for a recorded vote. So I'll start with Councilor.
Excuse me, Mr. Acting Mayor. I believe you need a seconder for Councilor Schneider's amendment, please.
Oh, yeah. Okay, Councilor Johnston for the amendment.
Are we voting on the amendment?
I'll take the amendment first, yes. So all those in favor for the amendment? Opposed?
Could I ask a question on the amendment?
Of course you can.
Yeah, well, could you just clarify what exactly are you asking for in the amendment?
So I had asked Councilor Schneider to bring this forward, but it was an amendment that I was considering bringing forward through the committee, but I wanted to give some time and ensure that the language was right through consultation with staff. And it's more so a sense of accountability as a direction from this council to the work that will be done, that council members will be throughout its process updated, but at the same time consulted and informed as to the findings and of the areas that require more work.
Okay, that better explains it for me. I would ask that the recorded vote also be used for the amendment.
Okay, thank you. So Councilor Davey?
I'm in favor.
Thank you. Councilor Schneider?
In favor.
Thank you. Councilor Gazzola?
In favor.
Councilor Michaud?
In favor.
Councilor Galloway-Sealock?
I'm in favor.
Councilor Ioannidis?
In favor.
Councilor Johnston?
In support.
Thank you. Councilor Chapman?
In favor.
Councilor Marsh?
In favor.
And of course, I'm in favor as well, and the amendment carries unanimously. So to the main motion, Councilor Davey?
In favor.
Councilor Schneider?
In favor.
Councilor Gazzola?
Not in favor.
Councilor Michaud?
In favor.
Councilor Galloway-Sealock?
I'm in favor.
Councilor Ioannidis?
In favor.
Councilor Johnston?
In favor.
Councilor Chapman?
In favor.
Councilor Marsh?
In favor.
And I'm also very much in favor, and that also carries with one opposed. All right. And Councilor Gazzola, you had asked for item number 5 to be voted separately?
Yes, I think it's the reason I'm asking. It's quite a big venture that we're going into for a number of years, and there should be a vote on council that is recorded. That's all.
Okay.
So I have no comments. I just wanted to have a recorded vote.
Okay, I see no other questions or comments, so I'll take the vote. Councilor Davey?
In favor.
Councilor Schneider?
In favor.
Councilor Gazzola?
In favor.
Councilor Michaud?
In favor.
Councilor Galloway-Sealock?
I'm in favor.
Councilor Ioannidis?
In favor.
Councilor Johnston?
In favor.
Councilor Chapman?
In favor.
Councilor Marsh?
Wholeheartedly in favor.
And I'm in favor as well. And I'll take a vote on all the remaining items. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. Okay. So we are done, reports of the committee. We're done unfinished business and new business and questions and answers of staff. Councillor Johnston?
Yes, thank you. And I wanted to ask a question with regards to an article that was in the record. I believe it was in Friday's record, and it was about how the pandemic has accentuated systemic inequities that were already present in our society, and certainly has deepened issues for our Black, Indigenous, people of color, and poor communities. And this article talked about 5 central Kitchener neighborhoods with household incomes a third below regional incomes, and they have a collective COVID infection rate 62% above the regional rate during the second wave. The people interviewed in this article talked about feeling that they had not received adequate public health outreach, and just how they're dealing with it. You know, we always talk, one of the things we've heard about during COVID is that we're in this together, but many people in our community, we are definitely going through COVID in very different ways. And this was a huge concern of mine as I read it. From, you know, it's certainly something that we know from our social determinants of health, that this is how different communities are affected by public health issues. But I'm very concerned. I'm very concerned about how people in our community are faring with COVID. So my question was, I'm wondering, what is the right mechanism for our council to raise these concerns with public health?
Mr. Chapman?
Where we want this question to go to.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Singh, and to Councillor Johnston. I read the article that you've referenced. I think it's an important question that you've raised. And so to your specific question around what's the mechanism to advance this issue, as you know, City Council has approved the Regional Pandemic Plan, which deals with our coordinated response to the pandemic. This is very much an issue of the public health response to the infection rate in our community. And so my recommendation to you and to Council would be that with your agreement, I can pose this question to the regional chair the regional CAO who chairs the Pandemic Control Group, and request that he put it on the next meeting of the Pandemic Control Group so that public health can respond to the issue. If I understand you correctly, I think there are 2 questions here. The first is, what is public health's assessment of this disaggregated data? And based on their assessment, what is their response, including the delivery of service at the neighborhood level? And so I'd be pleased, Councillor Johnston, to take that question back, obtain a response, and ensure that that's shared with all of Kitchener Council.
Yes, thank you so much. That would be wonderful. I haven't spoken to other councillors ahead of this meeting, but certainly it is concerning, and I don't know if any other councillors want to comment on this as well. But I thank you very much for bringing that to the pandemic response group.
Thank you, Councillor Johnston. Councillor Michaud?
Yeah, I read that article as well, and it is concerning, and I'm glad Councillor Johnston brought this forward. I think there is certainly an inequity in healthcare as well in our city, and certain areas, as you alluded to, are higher targeted for a lot of things. And when we see rates of COVID rising in certain areas, I think we need to address that. So I appreciate you bringing this forward.
Thank you, Councillor Michaud. I see no one else, so we'll go to the first reading of the bylaws. Can I get a mover? Moved by Councillor Chapman, second by Councillor Ioannidis. there is a small amendment that it be to number C, that it's 68 Saddlebrook Court. And okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. On my sheet here says an amendment, but the sheet, oh yeah, so it says Crescent. The agenda says Saddlebrook Crescent, instead is Saddlebrook Court. So we'll go on to the committee of the whole. Councillor Marsh, you're up.
All right. Thank you. So can I have a mover for the second reading of the bylaws? Councillor Galloway Seelock, all in favor? Opposed, that's carried. And next, let's look at item number 1, Ontario Small Business COVID-19 Recovery Network Program. And do I have a mover? Councillor Ioannidis. Any questions or comments? We have, okay, all in favor? Okay, that carries unanimously. Next, we have Regional Council Composition Review. Councillor Davey.
Thank you. I am actually going to move the recommendation with, but I'm also going to add 2 amendments that I believe the clerk staff has queued up. I did forward it to council earlier today so they could reflect upon it.
Yes.
Yeah, so I guess I could, if clerks could bring that up, I could speak to it briefly. So essentially, council may remember that.
Okay, just hold.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
One sec, council. Madam Clerk or Mr. Clerk, who's looks like Mr. Bunn is here with us, or Ms. Saunderson, can you please put that on the screen?
Yep.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Davey.
Yeah, thank you. So I understand the region was on a bit of a compressed timeline, and even though this council, I believe at the time, had shown interest in moving a double direct method of governance, due to the compressed timeline, I don't think the region can really accommodate the public engagement in that part of it. So while I am suggesting we move the recommendation, I'm also adding that when this review comes up again in 2026, that alternative methods of governance be explored with the public. And so that's part of it. The other part that I would like as well, this doesn't actually have bearing on the region themselves. This would be, the second part would be something only the province can do, and that would be to remove the existing clause that currently exists that prevents members of council in a 2-tier municipality from running for both levels. That is not the case across the country. There are scenarios where in the country where you can run at both levels. And I think that's actually a great interim step to let the public decide whether they want to have somebody represent them at both levels. It would require 0 work, I believe, on behalf of scheduling or planning with staff, because as we all know, our mayor is a de facto member of regional council, so there would never be any scheduling conflicts or anything like that, and it would open up that freedom. Just looking at the motion here, it's actually not exactly as I had sent it before. Okay, that's 2026, but also yeah, there's a slight change in the bottom in that I'd like it to be forwarded to the Premier, the Minister of Municipal Affairs, as well as the local municipalities. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, no, I have no concerns with the resolution. I was wondering why Councillor Davey would not add circulation to all municipalities that are involved with regional government, which would be a number of municipalities across the province. I think it would probably be of interest to them, and it can be very easily added, I would think.
Yeah, I have no concern with that. I think specifically, Councillor Gazzola, any other 2-tier municipalities in the province, right?
That's right. Yes.
Yeah, I'm happy to add that.
Okay, so to be clear, we're talking about the both tiers of any two-tier government, any municipalities that are affected, correct?
Correct.
We'll ask clerks to figure out who all the different names of those. Thank you very much. Okay, next up we have Councillor Galloway. Oh, sorry, Councillor Gazzola, was that it? Okay, so then Councillor Galloway Seelock, you're up.
Yeah, I just asked that those two, I guess there's 3 clauses there, that number 2 and 3 be taken separately. I don't agree with number 2. And so I want to be able to oppose that. Other than that, I support the rest of the recommendations.
So you want number 2 to be done separately, but 1 and 3 could be together.
I think 2 and 3 go together, not with number 1, but I could be wrong.
There are 3 clauses, and if it's just number 2, I don't.
However you want to deal with it, I just want to vote against clause number 2.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, great. Next is Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, I also have concerns with clause number 2, but I'm not sure if I quite understand it. So maybe Councillor Davey, could you just explain what you're saying here? Would this mean that a candidate could be on both a regional ballot and a city ballot, or I'm not quite sure what.
Yeah, that's correct. So right now, the Municipal Act prevents you from running for both levels in Ontario. That's not the case across the country. I've always struggled with why that is, especially again, since the mayor sits on both, so it's not like there'd ever be any scheduling or conflict issues. And to be honest too, I do see it as a longer term solution. Like I not to get too deep into it, but for example, I'm in favor of, in the long term, with ranked balloting. I think that's something that's important. But the problem in our municipalities, there's so many people to vote for, for regional seats, regional chair, mayor, your ward councillor, school board. Any sort of ranked balloting going in the future would be a nightmare in our 2-tier municipalities. So I see this as a minor step towards that.
Okay, I don't think I'll be supporting the second motion, but so I appreciate the fact that we're going to separate them out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I don't. So if the councillors who have their hands raised are done, then we'll. Thank you. Okay, so
Could I ask
Councillor,
for a recorded vote too, please?
on all of them.
Well, I guess there's just the 2, so yeah.
Okay. All right. So sure. So if there are no further questions or comments, then I'll just make my own. I want to just thank Councillor Davey for bringing this forward. I was appalled by the fact that the region did not do a thorough and genuine public consultation on this issue. I really don't feel that the municipalities were on the lower tier level were really given much opportunity to comment beyond well, we were given opportunity to comment. We commented and it was ignored. There was no response, no feedback. And that's just not how our Waterloo region normally operates. So I was disappointed in that. And I would have liked to see us really understand the issues and understand what the public thinks we should be doing. So with that, I will take some recorded votes. So first we're going to vote just on clause 1. So can I ask Councillor? Okay, we're gonna go backwards. Councillor Chapman.
In favor.
Councillor Johnston.
In favor.
Councillor Ioannidis.
In favor.
Councillor Michaud.
In favor.
Counselor Johnston. No, sorry, I mixed. Counselor Galloway Seelock.
I'm in favor.
Counselor Gazzola.
In favor.
Counselor Schneider.
In favor.
Counselor Davy.
In favor.
And Acting Mayor Singh.
Councillor Marsh was trying to show me off by going backwards. I am.
Oh, come on. No, it's just because I had asked for it one time and get a lot of flack for it. Okay, now we're going to go back the normal way. So we're going to vote on 2 and 3 together, because if 2 were to fail, then we really wouldn't need to send our resolution to the region to all those parties. So we're going to just vote on 2 and 3 together. Councillor Davy.
In favor.
Oh, yes.
I'm sorry, before we continue with that vote, how did you vote?
Oh, thank you. I was in favor.
Thank you. Sorry, continue.
I mentioned in my comments, but you're right. I should have voted. All right. So then 2 and 3, Councillor Davies in favor. Councillor Schneider.
In favor.
Councillor Gazzola.
In favor.
Councillor Galloway Seelock.
Opposed.
Okay. Councillor Michaud.
Favor.
Councillor Ioannidis.
In favor.
Councillor Johnston.
In favor.
Councillor Chapman.
Opposed.
Acting Mayor Singh.
I'm in favor.
And myself, I'm in favor as well. All right. And so then on the amended motion, we need to do it again. So we're going to just go from 1 to 10. Oh,
Sorry,
go ahead.
Councillor Marsh, you don't have to record a vote for this if it's only me that asked for it. I just wanted it on the amendments.
Oh, okay. All right. So clerk, could we? Yes, thank you. All right. So now can we just have a show of hands? All in favor of the motion as amended? Thank you. All opposed? That carries. Whew. All right. So thank you very much, everybody. So next we have number 3, the COVID financial impacts, request for phase 2 safe restart funding. Do I have a mover? All right, Councillor Schneider. And any questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? That carries unanimously.
Move that the committee rise and report.
Okay. Then all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And it's been moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Schneider that the proceedings and the recorded pecuniary interests and conflicts taken in the meeting of the Committee of the Whole held this date as attached hereto and forming part of these minutes are hereby adopted and confirmed. All in favor? Oh, sorry, that's you.
All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. And can I get a mover and a seconder for the third reading of the bylaws? All those in favor, sorry, Councillor Galloway Seelock, seconded by Councillor Marsh. All those in favor? And opposed? And that carries. Madam Clerk, there's no other items?
There are not, Mr. Acting Mayor.
Okay, in that case, let's end the meeting. So can I get a mover? Councillor Michaud, seconded by Councillor Chapman. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. Thank you.